BK and Ferrario are broadcasting live from Blues training camp at the Centene Community Ice Center. Brought to you by Bud Light, Skimmer's Original Vodka Iced Tea, and E&B Granite, Bernie Federko's only choice for granite countertops, cabinets, and flooring.
If we're going to be a good team, Holloway has to replicate that, or very close to replicating. It's not just point-wise. Probably the hardest working player we have in our organization right now. You come in here on a Sunday morning and you think you have the place to yourself, and then you hear this pucks clanging around and he's in the shooting room. Like, he's a hockey player. He loves it. He works extremely hard. His conditioning is off the charts. You know, better person than player too. Like, he's the full package of what you would want in an organization, and we learned that after we got him. You don't know those things until you get them in the room, but he's a core piece of what we have going, and he wants to be a core piece too.
That was Doug Armstrong yesterday speaking with the media for the final time, Alex, previewing a training camp as the general manager of the St. Louis Blues. Alongside Alex and T-Bone, I'm BK. We are broadcasting live once again out of the E&B Granite Studios at the Centene Community Ice Center, where the Blues did indeed have a group take the ice this morning for the first practice of the 2025 training camp.
Let's play Guess the Lines right now. Go!
I've got some combinations for you if you'd like to hear them.
Man, I wrote them down the first time on the notebook. That's like Christmas morning for me. That was unwrapping a PlayStation right there, an N64.
The biggest line combinations for those curious. Top two lines with Group A, Snuggerud with Thomas and Stenberg, Buchnevich with Bukestad and Texier, and then D-min pairings. There were two of them in particular that stood out. Lindstein with Falk and Broberg with Jiricek. It was not Dylan Holloway on the ice this morning. He'll be on the ice, I think, here momentarily, if not already, with the second group that's out there for practice. Alex, that was high praise from Doug Armstrong for Dylan Holloway. Hardest working individual in our organization, a core member of our group moving forward. No, they don't have that contract extension in place, but it seems really kind of like a formality at this point. They will get that done at some point in time. What did you have as your reaction when you heard Doug Armstrong say those things yesterday about Dylan Holloway?
Well, the first thing I thought of was I was thinking of Ryan O'Reilly, because him talking about looking down on the rink on a Sunday and hearing pucks clang off the glass, that's what they used to say about O'Reilly all the time. He'd be on the ice still 45 minutes after everybody else left because he was trying to get better. But then the more he talked, it's like, okay, so Dylan Holloway is kind of the heartbeat of this team right now. Like, everybody looks at the Blues and says, hey, Robert Thomas or Jordan Kyrou or Parayko or Bennington, like, these are core pieces of your roster. But what makes the engine go was Dylan Holloway. And frankly, I mean, Doug Armstrong has said that multiple times, that the offer sheet moves that they made expedited this retool that they were in the midst of. And yes, some of this was Broberg and the play that he had last year, but Dylan Holloway was a guy that went from a third-line potential player to this guy should be playing top-line minutes for you. He's a guy that could have scored 30 goals last season, a guy that can put up 80-plus points. So Doug Armstrong's right. If this team wants to improve from where they were last year, potentially fight for a top-3 spot in the Central Division, it's unfair to him, but you set the standard last season, and how you play sets the tone for the rest of the roster. He's going to have to be one of those bright spots that continue to improve.
Yeah, I was thinking when you hear that quote of, you know, O'Reilly, Perron, those kind of guys. And I'd say Perron because he's a winger, not a center like Ryan O'Reilly was. But I think you're right. I think the guy is like the heartbeat of the team, and he's really the guy that I think we talked about this last year as the second line really took off of Shen and Kyrou. Felt like he was kind of the guy that helped get Kyrou to that next level as well. So you look at him and you say, okay, yeah, that is the guy that drives the offense for the St. Louis Blues. And Army's right. He's going to have to repeat what he did last season, or if not, get a little bit better for the Blues to take that next step forward here this season.
I would compare him to Jaden Schwartz. I've done this before, but I would continue to do so now. You look at what Schwartz was in his first 6 or 7 years with the St. Louis Blues, starting with his age 21 season. His average year, Alex, 24 goals, 61 points, a plus 13 on the ice. And you remember at the time watching these teams, he was the engine. No matter what line he was on, you found a way to fix it, basically. That's how I feel about Dylan Holloway. You're going to get the best out of his line mates every time that he is on the ice with them. And that is how you become a core member of an organization. I would say right now, if you're looking through it, Alex, and I'm curious your view on this, Robert Thomas is a pillar. I'm not just talking about players that you expect to be here for the next 3 years. I'm talking about guys that you are building the organization upon. This is your foundation of everything else that exists. Robert Thomas would be one of those players for me. Dylan Holloway would be another player for me. I know some won't like this answer, but at this point in time, Jordan Kyrou is a third pillar of your organization right now. Defensively, I think it's Parayko and it's Broberg. And to me, those are your 5 pillars. If you want to throw in Jordan Binnington, you could. He's a little more like difference in age, in contract status changes things there for me. But if you want to throw him in, boom, there's your 6. And Holloway working his way into that mix after 1 season with the organization is a pretty remarkable feat.
Yeah, I would agree with you there. Kyrou's kind of like the fringe player. I think they're building around him, but I don't think they're tied to him to where if the trade came along and he agreed to it, they'd move him. But we're not going to get into that conversation because we're past it.
To start again.
But what I'm saying is, like, Kyrou is the guy that you're building around because he's the guy that provides offense, but like he's in a different tier than Thomas. But all those are right. Holloway's building himself into that. I think Snuggerud is building himself into that. Those 2 pieces are putting themselves in that conversation within the next couple of seasons, and I would put Mailloux in that conversation as well. You don't acquire Mailloux the way that Doug Armstrong talked yesterday. It's like, hey, we're not worried about what he looks like this season. We think in a couple of seasons he's going to be right where we need him, and if he's better, then great. But who you mentioned are my pillar pieces, with the potential of adding Holloway, Snuggerud, and Mailloux. And I mean, that's 6, 7, 9, 10 guys. That's how you build a roster that is competitive consistently. Like, that's what Florida did. Now, Florida found a way to go out there and find superstars, but they've got like 7 or 8 guys that they look at and they say, these are our core pieces. So that's the window you hope for. It's just, do these guys live up to that expectation?
Yeah, I would agree he belongs in that core piece. And when you look at the Blues and when they signed him to that offer sheet, you want to talk about a major win from St. Louis. I don't think they signed him thinking he was going to move himself into that category.
No,
I think
was the prize.
Was the prize possession of that. They believe that Broberg would move into that, along just kind of like how they think Mailloux will move into that. That's why they acquired him this year. Holloway was more of like a secondary piece to where if he became like, I don't know, a Jake Neighbors type on your third line, you would say, okay, yeah, that was a win for us to go out and sign him to an offer sheet and give up a couple draft picks in the compensation for it. This has been a huge win. It's the thing that accelerates their retool, right? We were kind of talking about this. We'll get into this later, but this is what moves them from potentially retool to starting to begin their next window of winning here in St. Louis, is getting a guy like Holloway that is a surprise when you sign him and moves into that pillar conversation.
And by the way, BK, I would put Binnington into that because he's just the guy that they expect to be competent for them. And I'd put that in a pillar because if you're goaltender, somebody that every season you can rely on.
Agreed. So I think we might be looking at this slightly differently, which is totally fine. But I'm talking about for the next 5 years, what are you building around? What is the foundation of your home, right? Your home is the biggest investment that you make in your life. And it's a 30-year overlay for most of us in terms of our mortgage. For the Blues, we're talking about a 5-year window is what I would look at it as, is who are the pillars of what you're trying to accomplish over the next 5 years. And so for them, I don't know if Binnington's going to be here for that entire time. That's just my honest to God answer. I think maybe, but I'm not totally sure of that. I'm very solid on you will see Robert Thomas here for the next 5 years. You will see Dylan Holloway here for the next 5 years. At this point in time, I'm pretty confident that you're going to see Jordan Kyrou here for the next 5 years, despite some people disagreeing with that notion. I would add in Parayko, I would add in Broberg to that mix. So those 5 for me, I think are pillars. This gets back to the Cardinals conversation that we've had so many times, which is how many players could you truly say that about on the St. Louis Cardinals right now?
0.
Maybe 1. Maybe it's Mason Wynn that you feel really confident is going to be here for the next 5 years. I know some would disagree with that, especially with J.J. Weatherholt coming through the system. So maybe the answer truly is 0. For the Blues, I think right now it's 5. It's a pretty good starting point given the fact that this time last year, we didn't know exactly how many of these guys were potentially going to be here. They added at least 2, and I would argue 3 with the emergence of Jordan Kyrou into this mix over the course of 1 season.
Yeah, and once again, this is how you remain consistent. This wasn't as Doug mentioned yesterday, this wasn't we're going to tank and try and get a franchise player with the first overall pick, because typically you're tanking every year to build onto that like Chicago is right now. This was build on the fly, which always goes back to Holloway and Broberg. Like, if that offer sheet doesn't happen, we are having a different tone this potential season or last season than what they are. So, yeah, there's a lot of pressure on Holloway and, frankly, Broberg as well to maintain what he did last year. But Holloway seems like that pulse, much like we talked about yesterday with Walker and how he was an identity piece that Jim Montgomery labeled. Holloway's that. Holloway plays a certain style that drags everyone else into the fight. It dragged Kyrou into the fight last year. It dragged Shen into the fight last year. So Holloway is a heartbeat type of player for this team, which is a core piece.
Last thing that I wanted to get to here, ESPN.com had a piece yesterday that I wanted to bring up with you, Alex, to get your thoughts. They wrote the following. Biggest question for the St. Louis Blues heading into 2025, where do they fit in the Western Conference landscape? The Blues scraped together a playoff appearance last season. The moves that they made in the offseason, along with the idea that prize prospect Jimmy Snuggerud is expected to challenge for a top 6 place, suggest that they are once again in a window to return to the playoffs for the foreseeable future. But what if the Blues are more than just a playoff team? Should they be included in the group of Stanley Cup contenders in the Western Conference? They returned 7 players who finished with at least 16 goals last season, with the expectation that Snuggerud could join that group this season. Meanwhile, Suter scored a career-high 25 goals last year. Couple that with how they responded to systemic changes made by Jim Montgomery, and the Blues should be setting their sights even higher in 2025. Alex, in your mind, what would have to happen for that to take place? For them to go from a playoff contender to a legitimate contender in the Western Conference to do something more meaningful, what would have to take place?
They have to have a player go from star category to superstar category, or another player to enter the star category. And we talked about this last week when you were out, because they had kind of a tiers chart, and the only guy that was, if I'm remembering this correctly, T-Bone, Robert Thomas was an all-star. He wasn't a star, he was an all-star.
He's the only one.
I'd argue that he's already a star, but you have to have, whether it's Kyrou or Holloway or Broberg or Mailloux or Parayko, you've got to have one other piece emerge as a star, because you can't do it all yourself. And I know they're kind of a pack mentality, but you got to have somebody else who's in that upper echelon. I think Holloway can do it. I think Kyrou can do it. I think even a Jimmy Snuggerud can do it, or a Broberg on the defensive side. But what also has to happen is you have to see a couple of teams take a step back. I am anticipating this. I don't think Winnipeg's going to have the 4th most goals scored in the National Hockey League this year, because they lost some pieces. I don't think Vegas is going to be one of the top defensive teams this year, because Petro's not playing. And I don't think Colorado's going to be as good as they always are. So you need some teams to take a step back. I'm in the same camp as Joey was, and he talked about this on the podcast with us. He thinks they could be a second or third place team in the Central Division. I agree with that. But you need somebody else to take that same step that Robert Thomas took the last couple of years.
And mine kind of ties into that. Mine would be those wingers on Thomas's line. You need Buchnevich to get back to what he was in year 1, where he had 76 points and was a 30-goal scorer. And you need Jimmy Snuggerud to end up becoming the guy that we kind of expect in his rookie year, to where you're looking at him going, okay, yeah, he's a 20-goal guy and 50 points for the St. Louis Blues. If you get that on that top line, along with you get the same offense from Holloway, Kyrou, and Shen, your third line is deeper. Your bottom 6 is deeper than it was a year ago. That's how you get to that level, in my opinion.
That's part of mine. Booch or Snuggie, 30-plus goals. I think that's the starting point. For them to get to the place that we're talking about of being more than just a playoff contender in the Western Conference, you need somebody to emerge as a huge surprise and to take that next step in their career. Another thing, you need Fowler, Holloway, Kyrou, and Broberg to repeat what they did last year.
Yeah.
That's not a given. I think sometimes we assume that it will just be the same once again. Hey, man, a couple of years ago, we would have assumed that Booch was going to be that for the rest of his career here in St. Louis. That did not take place. So those guys have got to be the same as they were a year ago, and most of them do not have long histories of being what they were last year. And the other piece of it, one other player that I did not mention there needs to take a significant step forward. I don't know who that's going to be. Maybe it's Jake Neighbors going from the 20 to 25 goal scorer to 30 to 35, right? He has that career year. Everybody's surprised. And by the end of the year, he's playing top line minutes. That's possible. Maybe it's, hey, Braden Shin gets back to what he was 3 years ago. Maybe it's Suter comes in and is immediately a 30-goal scorer with the Blues. That's, whoa, okay, perfect situation. He's centering that second line. I don't really care who that player is, but they need one other guy to emerge. And if you get all of those things, it's a lot of ifs, but that's what it requires for you to go to this next step. that is how you can suddenly become a legitimate contender in the Western Conference. Alongside Alex and T-Bone, I'm BK. It's BK and Ferrario here on 101 ESPN. If you guys would like to get involved in the show, 314-399-9646. That's the Air Comfort Service text line to do so. You can always check us out on YouTube as well at youtube.com/101ESPN STL. We're broadcasting live out of the E&B Granite Studios at the Centene Community Ice Center, where the Blues are taking the ice today for the first day of training camp. Hoping to be joined by a player later on this morning/afternoon. We'll let you guys know if we hear anything on that front. But coming up next, we got to talk about the Cardinals. Alec Burleson has actually taken advantage of his runway season. Is he the only Cardinal to really do so? We'll talk about that next here on 101 ESPN.
From Blues training camp at the Centene Community Ice Center, this is BK and Ferrario on 101 ESPN. Brought to you by Bud Light, Skimmer's Original Vodka Iced Tea, and E&B Granite, Bernie Federko's only choice for granite countertops, cabinets, and flooring.
Swing, drive, hammered right center. Long run, Marte. He's not getting back. Burleson with a two-strike thunderbolt, and the Cardinals lead by a run.
So what it sounded like last night on FanDuel Sports Midwest alongside Alex and T-Bone on BK. Jordan Deacon back in the studio for us today as we're at Centene for the Blues' first training camp practice. Alex, Alec Burleson has been, without question, one of the biggest storylines of the 2025 season for the Cardinals. And I would argue one of the very few success stories of this year's team. His OPS is nearing 800. He is at 18 homers, 66 RBI. And this is coming off of a season in which he had 21 homers and 78 RBI. So the average has continued to go up. The slug has gone up significantly this year. He's just played in fewer games than he did a year ago. So that's why the slugging percentage is up despite a slight dip, quote unquote, in the volume numbers. He looks like the same guy or better than what he did last year. And that has not been the case for many Cardinals in recent memory. I mean, we've talked about this. Seemingly every player for the Cardinals comes up, has success in year one, and then year two, the league adjusts. They don't adjust to the league, and then boom, he goes back to, league average or worse hitter.
Then they're gone in 3 years.
Yeah. And for Burleson, it's been the opposite. He has steadily improved each year that we've seen him at the big league level. To you, Alex, is he the number one guy that's taken advantage of this runway season?
Yeah, I think he's the only guy that's taken advantage of this runway season. I mean, Michael McGreevy has taken advantage of it, Liberatore as well, but they've also been kind of, I don't want to say gifted because they've done well this season, but because of where the Cardinals are at in terms of them trying to eliminate payroll and get some of these guys off of their roster, they kind of have to be in the rotation. Burleson's the only guy on this team that didn't have a spot in the roster for the opening day lineup on opening day that has essentially pushed himself into you are an everyday player for the Cardinals. He's Wally pipped Lars Nootbaar. He's Wally pipped Jordan Walker, not so much the injury, but more so he just hasn't shown up. He's now the everyday outfielder, the only everyday outfielder for the Cardinals because Victor Scott has struggled.
Agreed.
So, yeah, I don't think there's anybody else on this roster, which I would hear the argument for the pitchers, that has taken advantage of the runway season as Alec Burleson has, because next year he is already in permanent marker in one of the corner outfielder spots, and it's not going to change.
At worst case scenario, he's in my lineup every day. Whether you want to put him in right field, left field, first base, DH, I don't really care where he plays so long as he is in the lineup. And I think the manager feels the same way. I mean, he's been out there every day basically since he emerged as one of their go-to guys. T-Bone, I wanted to get your thoughts on this because as I was thinking in my head earlier today as we're trying to go through what we could have a conversation about that's different in terms of the Burleson conversation, when you think about who's going to be on this roster that you would write in pen for 2027, so setting aside next year, because I think a lot of the same guys that we saw this year, whether we want them to be back or not, will probably be back next year because I don't anticipate the team being overly, I would say, aggressive in free agency.
Active, whatever.
Yeah. Burleson would be one of those players for me that I would like to see here in 2027 based on the information that I currently have. How many other guys would you put on that list?
I think it would be him and Herrera, and it's probably end of list. I don't know that Wynn falls on that. Now, if you were asking the Cardinals, I think Wynn is on that list. In my opinion, I still want to see more from his offensive game, especially when you're playing shortstop. Yes, it's a defense-first position, but when you look at shortstops across the game, Wynn is way down there on that list in terms of his offensive production. But I think it's Herrera, Burleson, and that's the end of the list.
And Weatherholt eventually, but
yeah.
He's kind of
I wasn't counting anybody
still.
that's not
Sure.
here yet because I think you could throw Weatherholt and Doyle into that conversation. But of the guys that are on the big league roster like right now and are on the 40-man right now, I think the list ends at Herrera and Burleson. And Herrera, they got to figure out a position for. But you can, like you said with Burleson, like if he ends up in left, he ends up in right. I don't care where he ends up. That dude can hit a baseball. So you find a way to get him.
They're kind of mirror images of one another in terms of not necessarily a go-to defensive stalwart, but real value with the bat in their hands. Got pop, but not necessarily true home run hitters. Just all around good players at the plate that you want to be a part of your roster. Probably future 5 or 6 hole hitters for a contending roster. And that's nice to have. It's not what you want to be your core members of your team, but it's a good starting point.
I think both of those guys are outfielders next year because I don't think Jordan Walker's here, and I think Lars Nootbaar is traded. And I think Herrera would be playing more outfielder if this injury that he had hasn't still been nagging him. I think you'd be seeing your left and right fielder playing next season, which, again, to your point, These are two pieces that you need as complementary pieces. You're still missing the star, though. But, I mean, these are the only two guys that I can actually dream on with the Cardinals right now. Because everybody else on this roster, I know what you are. Like, as much as I love Mason Wynn, I know what you are. I don't know what Weatherholt is yet, but I know what Newtbar is. I know what Donovan is. I think I know what Sajasi is. The only two guys that I feel like might be something more is Burleson, because he has had injuries in 2 years that he still fought through, and Herrera from what we've seen this year.
And that's why I've seen a lot of criticism of this whole runway season elsewhere posted over the last couple of weeks, really. I don't agree with it. I think this runway season did accomplish what it was supposed to. Now, it did not get very many positive answers, and if that's your critique of it, all right, that's totally fair. But the criticism of, like, you didn't learn what you have, yeah, you did. We've seen Nolan Gorman get extended runway, and guess what, guys? He's the same dude. He's the same dude. He got hot for about a month. I fell for it again because I'm prone to do that with Nolan Gorman.
I didn't.
And he's back into the strikeout problems. He's striking out about 40% of the time over the last 4 weeks. And he's not hitting for any average. It's down to like a 160 average over the last few weeks. So he's the same dude. Lars Nootbaar, he's going to get hot. He's going to go through a long cold spell. And by the end of the year, he'll be like a 700 OPS, which is fine, but it's not what this team is looking for right now. Jordan Walker, hey, nice 2-week stretch, big boy. Really liked seeing that. Real changes were implemented. And then he, at the first sign of any sort of issues at the plate, he went right back to the player that he used to be. And it was the same issues, the same low and away slider, and he's doing the same stuff at the plate. So, yeah, you've learned a lot about these guys. It just hasn't been overly positive. That's not the manager's fault. That's not the organization's fault necessarily. That's on the players. Eventually, they've got to go out there and hit.
Yes, we've learned something. Have the Cardinals learned something, though?
I think so. I don't know how you could possibly suggest otherwise.
That's where I think the frustration comes in, though, because fans haven't, until
we haven't heard from the GM.
Sure, but
the guy that's in charge, we haven't talked to.
Even when we hear, words don't mean anything anymore for me. Even if it's a new person, actions mean it. Because I think the Cardinals fans are concerned of, cool, I think we've known this for a while with these guys. They just won't move on from them.
See, I would say that Mo didn't move on from them. I agree with that. I can't prejudge what Chaim Bloom is going to do prior to him making a singular move. I think that he's going to be extremely active this offseason. If he's not, if he doesn't make those trades, well, then, yeah, we should all crush them because that's been the entire selling point of the 2025 season.
That's where you and I differ. I can get pre-mad because it's still the Cardinals, and we've had the conversations that Chaim is a carbon copy of Mo.
I typically understand the pre-mad because it is Mo, and Mo was you could read him like a book. I don't know if it's fair to do that for Chaim yet because I agree with what you're saying on Chaim. One, we haven't heard from him, so one, it's hard to know what he's really thinking. But two, he doesn't have the same attachment to any of these players, except for Liam Doyle, who he was a part of that helped draft in this current draft class that they had, and Weatherholt. He was a part of that draft as well. That's it. And so none of these guys at the big league level are anybody that he's attached to. That's the problem front offices run into, and Mo really ran into this. They make the draft of this player, and then they don't want to admit, oh, boy, we misevaluated Nolan Gorman. Oh, boy, we misevaluated Jordan Walker. Chaim doesn't care. Chaim's not the guy that drafted those guys. Chaim wasn't a part of their development process. He knows where this organization is, and I think that's where the frustration comes from this runway season. You're right. The answers were not good. The answer was you're in a rebuild. And I said this at the beginning of the year. If your position players don't take that step forward, they will enter a rebuild. Now, the pitching may have put them in that no matter what, since they have nothing coming. But they had nothing that was there to support this group of position players if it didn't work out. It's Weatherholt. Maybe Baez is a little bit exciting from what you've seen at his AA year. Yep. Jimmy Crooks, we'll see. That's 3 guys. And you just got answers on about 4 or 5 that did not work out as big leaguers.
And regardless of any of that, all of it comes back to spending to me. Not because you have to spend in order to win, but because if you're not going to produce a superstar from within, you have to spend. Those are your options. And I don't know the answer to that. I have no idea if they're going to be willing to spend on what is necessary to get them to the next step. And that's the whole conversation about baseball, the way that it's operating. And we'll get into that more as we go along here today on BK and Ferrario. With Alex and T-Bone on BK. Coming up next, what changes for the Illini's expectations if, as Vegas anticipates, they lose on Saturday? We'll talk about that next year on 101 ESPN.
Football is back, BK, and Underdog is the best place to put your entries and win all of the money all season long. And with Thursday Night Football tonight, you know I am going to put a nice entry in. So I've got higher on touchdowns for James Cook, lower on interceptions for Josh Allen, lower on pass yards for Tua, and lower on receiving yards for Tyreek Hill. You throw those together, BK, they pay 8-1 odds over at Underdog app.
You love to see it. This is the place that we go over there for our plays on Underdog, and you can do it too all season long. Playing on Underdog is easy. Just choose whether your favorite players are going to go higher or lower on stats like touchdowns, receiving yards, interceptions, and so much more. Get your entries right. You could win up to 5,000 times your cash, and you can play with as little as just $1. Here's what I need you to do. Download the app today. Sign up using the promo code BKO. That's promo code BKO. You'll score $50 in bonus funds when you play your first $5. It's promo code BKO on the Underdog app. Millions of fans have already won billions making plays on Underdog. Will you be next? Underdog. Make plays, win money. When you sign up, by the way, go ahead and screenshot
Send it.
Screenshot your first play. Send it to myself on Twitter at BK Sports Talk. We'll see what you've got for tonight, Thursday Night Football. Must be 18 or older. Present in Missouri. Terms to apply. See assets.underdogfantasy.com/web/play and get terms _DFS_.html for details. Concerned with your play, call 1-800-GAMBLER or visit www.ncpgambling.org.
ESPN Sports Center.
I'm Jordan Deacon. This SportsCenter update is driven by Johnny Londoff Chevrolet and Johnny Londoff Autoplex. Yesterday, the Cards lost to the Cincinnati Reds by a score of 6-2. They are off today and back in action tomorrow, opening a series against the Brewers. First pitch at Busch Stadium is at 7:15. And as for the Blues, they are back on the ice today. Training camp starts at Centene Community Ice Center. If you missed it, Jake Neighbors will be out the first couple of days due to a family matter. I'm Jordan Deacon. The SportsCenter update was driven by Johnny Londoff Chevrolet and Johnny Londoff Autoplex. See them at londoff.com. Chevy, together we drive. Are you kidding me?
BK and Ferrario are broadcasting live from Blues training camp at the Centene Community Ice Center. Brought to you by Bud Light, Skimmer's Original Vodka Iced Tea, and E&B Granite, Bernie Federko's only choice for granite countertops, cabinets, and flooring.
Alongside Alex and T-Bone, I'm BK. We're going to get to the college football side of things for just a little bit, but I did want to ask you about this, Alex, because you mentioned, hey, we've got the line combinations for the second group, and Alex has some big takeaways.
God, I love line combos.
Huge takeaways. I want to say this on the front end. I think Alex is overreacting, and I want that to be known ahead of time. However, I want my guy to be able to get his thoughts out there. So, Alex, when you saw the line combinations today for this second group, what stood out to you?
First of all, you can laugh at me all you want, but I'll be the one laughing when I'm correct on this.
And I think that, hey, you've earned that. If you're right on this, then God bless you. You should come back at me. But my personal opinion, I think we're overreacting a little bit to the combination.
Never wrong. Not on line combinations, right, Hall & Oates? The two that stick out to me, the biggest one is Dvorsky with Suter and Kyrou. Dvorsky's playing the wing with Suter and Kyrou. And this plays into what Armstrong told us of these guys playing with top level players. Carbonneau playing on the wing with Holloway and Chen. What's wrong, man?
No, go ahead. Sorry.
Oh, I thought I made you upset.
No, nothing that you did. You've been great.
And then the one that I overreacted to, if we're going to call it that, Lucic was playing with Matt Pekka and Alexei Toropchenko. I saw that and I said, cool, Lucic has got the upper hand on this fourth line and roster spot. And here's why. PTOs don't normally play on a line with another NHL. Guys that have been on PTOs in the past, even when Mike Hoffman was here, he played with a couple of AHLers, like fringe fourth line players, because they wanted to see what it looked like, but there were other guys they wanted to view on. If Lucic is playing with Toropchenko, they had Walker playing with Alexandrov and Wagner. Those are two AHL-destined guys. And they had Sundqvist playing with Joseph and Kaskamaki, players that are fighting for a fourth-line role. I looked at that and I said, cool, they want to see what Lucic and Toropchenko look like. I always go off of pairs, and a pair to me is they want to see what two wingers look like because they know that that fourth-line center position is either going to be Bukestad, Sundqvist, or Walker. So let's see what Lucic looks like with a guy that he could potentially be playing for. Because if he's here, I wonder if they say, well, he fits our fourth line better than what another guy might be, Joseph or a Texier. So I saw that, and I'm like, cool, he's got the upper hand to potentially make this roster.
My personal read on it is there's no downside to doing it this way. You need information on Lucic. It's the same reason why I like the way that they handle their young guys. Like, I know what Suter and Kyrou are. So let's put Dvorsky with them because it allows us to evaluate what that player is capable of. Holloway and Shin, I have nothing to evaluate there. Those guys are really good NHL players. So Carbonneau playing with them, all right, I've got you in a spot where you should succeed. Because if I put Holloway and Shin with Kyrou, I know what I'm getting from that spot. So you're in a position where you should succeed. Go out there and show us. If you're capable of being an NHLer, you're not going to have a situation where you've got an AHL player next to you that's making a ton of mistakes, and so I can't actually evaluate your performance because of how sloppy the line is outside of you. I can learn from you. The same thing is true for these fourth-line players. I don't really need to learn anything about Sonny or Walker or Torpo right now. I know what those guys are as my fourth-line players. I saw it most of last season for the Blues. I do need to learn about Lucic and how he can play right now and whether or not he makes sense as a pairing mate for Toropchenko. So to me, Alex, my read on this, and we just have differing views on it, and that's totally cool. That's what this is all about. My personal view on it is, of course they put Lucic with Toropchenko. They need to find out if these guys can work together. Mm-hmm. And this doesn't mean that he is more or less likely to make the roster than he was 24 hours ago to me. It just means that they are still in the same place that they were yesterday, where we need to find out. Like, he could make this roster. That was my firm stance yesterday. It remains my stance today. But to me, the line combinations with him being with Torpo, I don't think it tells me anything on the likelihood of him being here.
Yeah, maybe. And I mean, in all honesty, nothing changes in day one of training camp. Like, you got to see a few preseason games before you even get to that point. But I just go off of what Armstrong said yesterday and how definitive he felt like in terms of Lucic's role and how it fits on this team, and seeing him with a player like Toropchenko, because I know coaches like to look at pairs, and sometimes those PTO guys don't get that opportunity. It's, hey, go make your line look better by playing with two AHL players. And if you do, you've got a shot. But for him, and you're right, like, this is an NHL. They want to see what he looks like. They know what he is. It's just a matter, can you play? It just stuck out to me, and I pair it with Armstrong's comments of feeling like this is a player that could be on this roster. I just felt like he's got an upper hand, and that kind of showed it to me.
He's Alex. That's T-Bone. I'm BK. T-Bone, your 30-second thoughts on this?
Yeah, I'm not going to read too much into it. Okay. I'm going to wait till I see some preseason games.
T-Bone overreacts to everything he sees in spring training and nothing that he sees in training camp.
Yeah.
Welcome to how the show works.
Alex overreacts to what he sees in training camp and nothing that he sees in spring training, and I'm just right here.
Yeah, sure. Right, Nolan Gorman is a part of this team next year?
Let me know when we get into the regular season, and then I will overreact to everything. But I don't give a darn about what happens in preseason. In baseball or in hockey, I'm good on the preseason stuff. Once we get to the regular season, that's when I do my overreacting. That's when I'm good for what you guys are preseason-wise. Coming up next, 314-399-9646 is the Air Comfort Service text line for questions and answers here on 101 ESPN.
Blues training camp at the Centene Community Ice Center. This is BK and Ferrario on 101 ESPN. Brought to you by Bud Light, Skimmer's Original Vodka Iced Tea, and E&B Granite. Bernie Federko's only choice for granite countertops, cabinets, and flooring. You've got questions, we may have the answers. Maybe. It's BK and Ferrario's Questions and Answers on 101 ESPN.
With Alex and T-Bone, I'm BK. 314-399-9646 is the Air Comfort Service text line for questions and answers. If you guys have any questions, go ahead and get them in right now or on the YouTube chat, youtube.com/101ESPN-STL. This one comes from Ian. Guys, if Carbonell plays well with Shin and Holloway, does it really mean anything if Kyra's going to be there anyway? Why not play Carbonell with one of the spots that's up for competition? Can I start this one, Alex, real quick?
Well, yeah, sure. I overreact, so.
So my reasoning
I saw that and said he's making the team.
My reasoning as to why I would go about it this way is because if you put him on a line, for example, I'm trying to see where. So the other line that is available
could have put him on
is Suter and Kyrou, and that's Dvorsky. I think that tells you that Dvorsky's more likely to make the team as a third-line winger than Carbonell is. And Carbonell's in a really good spot to be able to take advantage of who are his line mates with Holloway and Shin. He's still playing with very good players, but he's not with the specific players that could potentially be on that third line. So that's my honest answer. They have to split these guys up in some way or another. Another player that's potentially on that third line, two of them are Bukestad and Texier. Yeah. They're with Buch today. There's no chance that they're going to be playing with Buch this season, most likely, barring something unforeseen.
Yeah.
So I wouldn't make too much of it, but they just want the young players, Carbonell, Dvorsky, and Stenberg, to play with highly talented individuals, and that's what they've done. They've worked this in a way that they can.
Yeah, I mean, coming from somebody who overreacts with this, like the way that I look at this is like this tells you more so that the guys that they really are impressed with in terms of development that are closest to the NHL are the ones that they're putting with these players because they want to see how they play with them. Like, you don't need to see a Carbonell playing with an Alexandrov and a Walker because that doesn't tell you where his talent level's at. I do think that this just tells you, yeah, it's a long shot of him making this roster unless he goes out there and dominates when he plays with those guys. And then the juggling usually takes place after the first or second day of training camp when they start to eliminate a couple of guys that are just destined to go back to juniors hockey or college hockey, or they eliminate the guys that are here on just tryout purposes to fill the roster. And then you start to see a more realistic line combination. And if they continue to perform, then that tells you. But right now, yeah, there's no point in putting them on a realistic line that he would be on. You want to see what he looks like with good players.
From the 314, guys, I love Steen, and I love the plan that they have in place for him to take over. However, are you nervous at all about losing a Hall of Famer like Doug Armstrong? This is something that I don't know how to answer, Alex, because I'm not entirely sure I understand what the plan is beyond this year.
I don't think they're losing him. That's the thing. Like, Doug's not making the decisions. Doug is just becoming a part of the inner circle of what was already the inner circle of the Blues.
I also wonder if Doug's still kind of making decisions. He's just not going to be the forward-facing individual.
Yeah,
It'll be more of a shadow hand.
Well, and a lot of this
kind of like what Mo and Gersh did.
See, I don't see it that way. I think it's even. I don't know what the
whole point of this was Army was he wanted to take his focus on more of Hockey Canada side of things because now he's running Hockey Canada on top of the Blues, and so the focus moving forward, because they have these inter-season tournaments every year now, I think the focus is now I'm giving somebody the opportunity, the main focus on the Blues. I'm still a part of the Blues that I'm helping with, but he's the decision maker. I'm focused on bigger things that I'm a part of. Yeah, that's the way I understood it.
I forget the way that they specifically have framed the president of hockey operations, GM, the job responsibilities, all of these different things. I think Army's still going to be involved. To what extent?
I think he's still the president of hockey operations.
Yeah, and if that's the case, that is what T-Bone said, where Mo retained his president of baseball operations responsibilities, and the idea was he was going to be more of the big picture, 10,000-foot view, in charge of these huge projects, looking for what the next frontier would be. The Cardinals saw that they were falling behind, and the idea was Mo's going to lead us through this. The pandemic happened, and all of those plans got thrown to the side, and Mo became the public voice again. So I don't know exactly what this is going to be.
Doug is labeled the president of hockey operations and the general manager. The general manager tag comes off of his name. Right. It's president of hockey ops, and Steen is the one that's making the roster decisions.
All right, from the 314. Guys, would you give away your house for nothing? And if not, why should the Cardinals give away a player that has no value?
Well, those are two very different things. If I give my house away for nothing, I'm living in a box on the side of the road.
Because my house does have value.
Yeah.
That's the difference. Like, would I sell my house for the exact value that it currently has? My answer is no, because I like my house. But if I lived in a house that I felt as though if I have another kid in the next few years, and 5 years from then, we have outgrown our current house situation and somebody is willing to give me market value for that house, whatever that becomes, yes, I would then give away my house for that market value. And that's what we're talking about here. The Cardinals feel as though they have, for lack of a better term, outgrown some of these players. And so they will be giving them up. Maybe it is for nothing, but if that's what the market tells you that it is worth, that's what you have to take for it. If your house is an absolute dump and it's so expensive to overhaul that you're basically getting nothing on the market for it, hey man, that's the market value. So that's where the Cardinals are.
I guess if I'm trying to take this like in the comparison sense, if I have a house that's a dump and there's no value, I'll stay in the house and I'll keep trying to fix it until there's more value in it. The problem is the Cardinals have been trying to fix that house for the last 5 years, and every time they fix something, something else breaks. It's like there's no point.
They're more like an old car where it keeps breaking down at this point. It's just not working.
Maybe there's somebody out there that is an old mechanic that like has the time and energy to put in that will actually be able to fix that car, but the Cardinals aren't that.
The Cardinals
are
like
my Ford Focus.
Yeah, the Cardinals are in the position where it's like, is it better to just live in this house that's a dump, or should I just get rid of it and go to an extended stay place? Well, probably just go live in a hotel for a couple of months.
All right, 314-399-9646 is the Your Comfort Service text line for questions and answers from the 618. Guys, why aren't the Cardinals tanking for the remainder of this season? I don't know, man. Have you been watching? Because
feels like they are.
It's kind of tanky. They're just playing bad teams.
If we're being honest, they're doing it, but they're doing it not on purpose. And what I mean by that is they're not good enough. I mean, look at their pitching. Their pitching's been like the worst since the All-Star break.
They're also not good enough to tank.
Also are
bad enough to tank.
Yeah, well, they're kind of doing it. I mean, like their offense is one of the worst in baseball in the second half. I think they're last in slugging. They were last in on base. They're like 27th in average. Like they're tanking. They're just not doing it in like the way you're talking about, which is like you just put guys on IL, which they're starting to do.
This was Doug Armstrong's whole thing about the Blues trying to just tank for first overall pick. He's like, we're too good to do that. Like we've got Thomas and Kyrou and Binnington and Parayko. Like there's no point in doing that. I'm not saying the Cardinals have those guys, but you still have players who can hit like Herrera and Burleson. You have McGreevy, who is still at least competitive. Your bullpen, these guys, they have competitors. The Cardinals aren't in the same spot as like the White Sox or the Rockies that just have an abysmal roster that there's no competitiveness to.
Yeah, the Cardinals are also only a couple of games back of the A's from the 5th overall selection, or at least the 5th best odds to win the lottery. So, and they're currently about 2.5 up of falling out of the top 10 because there's 3 teams that are ineligible for a top 9 pick this year: Colorado, Washington, and the Angels. So they kind of throw everything into flux. So basically, the Cardinals either select like top 9 or 13th. Because of that donut hole in the middle there. Right now, they're 8th. And they're a couple of games up on 13th, couple of games back on 5th. They're going to be somewhere in that range whenever the draft selection comes. So their range just isn't that great. There's not really a whole lot of upside to quote-unquote tanking right now compared to what they're currently doing. All right, 314-399-9646 is the Your Comfort Service text line for a couple of more questions on the text line from the 636. Morning, gents. Any chance if you could do me a solid and see if the TV all the way down on the right never mind. 314-399-9646.
I don't know where that one was going, but
from the 314, since JJ has value and the Cardinals need pitching, what do you think they could realistically get for JJ Weatherholt? That's a fun question. It's an absurd question, but I like it. They could get a ton for JJ Weatherholt if they wanted to trade him. I mean, somebody would be willing to give up a lot for a guy that projects to be a plus shortstop at the major league level with a high on base percentage and a decent slug.
So why would you trade that?
Exactly. Unless you really, really valued the pitcher that you're getting in return. But I would rather have the position player than the pitcher personally.
I think the only guy you couldn't acquire that's pitching with Weatherholt would be Skeens. He's probably the only guy you couldn't acquire if you put Weatherholt available.
I don't know if he's that high in trade value.
Oh,
you think you could get Skubal for Weatherholt?
Probably because he's coming close to the end of term.
Yeah.
And pitchers break. Like, if I'm a team,
I think teams are so afraid to lose that pitching because it is so rare that I actually don't think he would be able to get you that much. I was thinking more like minor league, like for like. You could get a really high-level pitching you could get another Liam Doyle for J.J. Weatherholt. Major league pitching, established major league pitching, I don't know that you could actually get that for J.J. Weatherholt.
Yeah, I think his value would be there to where you would get maybe there are more names than just Skeens. Like maybe Scuba would fall in that, but I think because of his term, like the Tigers could get 7 years of control of J.J. Weatherholt for one more of a Cy Young Award winner that they're probably not going to re-sign.
But if I have Scuba, you should re-sign that.
Yeah, well, I mean, I don't know what they're going to do, but yeah, they should. But
I would trade J.J. Weatherholt for Tarek Skubal.
I would too.
I don't think that the Tigers would do that, but I would absolutely do that.
I'm not sure the Cardinals would pay him, so I'm not sure the Cardinals
aren't paying him, so there's no point.
Alongside T-Bone and Alex, I'm BK. Coming up next, is Nathan Walker setting the culture for the Blues moving forward? Alex had an interesting thought on that. We'll let you hear from him next here on 101 ESPN.
and Ferrario are broadcasting live from Blues training camp at the Centene Community Ice Center. Brought to you by Bud Light, Skimmer's Original Vodka Iced Tea, and E&B Granite, Bernie Federko's only choice for granite countertops, cabinets, and flooring.
With Alex and Devon, I'm BK. So yesterday we had Nathan Walker on the show, Alex, and he was talking about how important it was for him to stay with the St. Louis Blues, why he decided to sign that 2-year contract extension. He also spoke with Jeremy Rutherford, Blues insider for The Athletic, and you saw a quote from him that you immediately read and said, I find that to be really interesting for this reason. What was the quote? What was your takeaway?
So this was the quote, and Walker talked with JR after us, and he said, everyone wants to play 1,000 games in the NHL and make tons of money, but we love it here. My family and I love being a part of the St. Louis community and being a Blue. The history that this place has, it's something truly special to me. I saw that, and I said, okay, I get it. He's a fourth-line player, and these guys aren't breaking the bank. But Nathan Walker, for everything that he has done and will do for the team, especially with the cap going up. I mean, you're talking about a guy who could arguably make about like $1.5 million AAV a year moving forward. Like, to put it in context, Dakota Joshua, who's a fourth-line player, fringe third-line player, but a fourth-line player probably, is making $3.25 million with the Maple Leafs. That's a fourth-line player who's 30 years old. Walker fights, does penalty kills, scores goals, creates offense, everything. And he's taking $877,000. Again, not a lot, not breaking the bank, but that, to me, I saw that, and I'm like, is he setting the culture for the Blues? Because when you think of the Panthers and you've seen the contracts that have been handed out and you hear how some of those guys react, it's like, look, we just want to keep the band together. We want to keep a group of guys together that are going out there and putting their best foot forward to try and win Stanley Cups. Less money here allows more money for other guys. Everybody in that locker room loves Nathan Walker, knows what he does. Do other guys see that and say, man, Nathan Walker's taking less to stay in this role for this team to help win a cup because he loves this community? Does Dylan Holloway consider that? Does Philip Broberg consider that? Does Snuggerud consider that down the road? Again, not saying they're going to take $3 million when they should be $9 million players. But when you've got one guy that takes that side of the coin of like, hey, I don't need as much money, I just want to be in a good place with a good team, I do wonder if that sets a culture in place for other guys in that locker room moving forward.
I don't know. So I agree with what you're saying as the premise there, but I think it requires a guy like Holloway to be the one that sets the tone for it and not Nathan Walker. And that's not a shot against Nathan Walker, but typically, when I think of guys that kind of start this trend for teams, I don't think fourth liners. I think like Matthew Tkachuk, who would do it for the Florida Panthers, right? And he's like the superstar on this first. He was the first superstar to do it, which then leads to the offseason that they now have where they keep the whole band together. I don't know if a fourth liner in Nathan Walker is the guy that can really set that in motion. I think the guy that has to set that in motion is a top 4 defenseman like a Philip Broberg or a top 6 winger and potentially a 30-goal scorer in Dylan Holloway. I think that's the guy that's got to set that kind of mindset into fruition.
And I agree with that because Sam Reinhart took significantly less to stay with
the Florida thing real quick before we move on from it. It's Barkov. Barkov's the one that made that possible. Barkov is at $10 million for Florida. And the response from the Panthers for the Matthew Tkachuk sweepstakes, reportedly, nobody makes more than Barkov here. Nobody. You don't get to make more than Barkov, which means Reinhart doesn't get to make more than Barkov, which means, hey, if Sam Bennett wants to stay here and he's got offers elsewhere for $10.1 million, we can't do that. You can have either 9.5 or below because Barkov makes 10, and that's the bar for us here in Florida. So that is the kind of thing that can take place, and I think the guy that could be that for the Blues. I don't know if it's realistic now because of where the cap is going, but your version of that would be Robert Thomas.
Yep.
If Thomas goes out there this year and has 100 points and took that contract early in his career, which is well below market value already at $8.1 million, that's the contract that you could look at and say, yeah, that changes things. That ends up becoming what we're talking about here. I think it's nice to have players like Nathan Walker that see the value in playing here in St. Louis and spew the beauty that is Blues hockey, right? I think there's value in that. How much value? I don't know, man. I think it's more rewarding the player for feeling that than it is anything on it changes a mindset. It's going to make Dylan Holloway take less money. I don't know that I see it that way at all.
Yeah, I mean, and again, it might be too too exaggerated of me thinking. It's just I know Nathan Walker's a guy that everybody in that room respects, and that's significantly less than what he could get on the market because he's a player that could, at minimum, make a little over $1 million AAV, and we're talking $200,000. But I think you're absolutely right. I think the culture was already set with a guy like Thomas taking the amount he was, which at the time was decent money. But with the cap going up, you're going to look at that and be like, damn, Parayko was as well, like 6.5, and maybe it was. Now,
that was a back issue, though. I felt a little different on that one.
Yeah, and I mean, he signed it early on in his career, too. It was late to the party, but now you look at it, and I mean, that's a $9 million plus defender right now in the NHL. So they've got the guys in place, and maybe it's Holloway that takes that mark. But Holloway's one of those guys that he's going to make $8+ million. You know it. It's not taking that less. Maybe a Jake Neighbors does it, to where he's taking less money than what he could get on the market, depending on what his season looks like. It's just something that I'll keep an eye on because teams that have longevity in terms of their success always have that culture in place. Tampa was that way for the longest time. Still is, really, with what Victor Hedman's making and Braden Point and Kucherov. But it's a fourth liner, but it's also a guy that everybody in that room respects. And it was just like, man, I wonder if that's the start of what the Blues could potentially do.
I like the idea because it is what the best teams are doing, right? Is you keep the band together. Everybody's willing to sacrifice a little bit of money. I mean, it's not a ton, right? I mean, you said it. It's not like going from $9 million to $5 million, but it is a little bit that helps keep the band together. If you believe in the window, and Nathan Walker said it yesterday, hey, look, he believes in what this team is building towards, you're going to need some guys to potentially take a little bit less. Again, that if Holloway doesn't, maybe he is the guy that kind of starts setting this as the trend along with Philip Broberg. I just don't know if Walker does, but it is something to potentially keep an eye on.
Yeah, I think that this could happen. I think that this is necessary to happen if you want to be an extended run of excellence. I don't think that it starts because of Nathan Walker, and that doesn't diminish anything about his contract extension. I think the reason that he probably signed the contract extension is twofold. One, he likes it here, and two, it's guaranteed money.
Yeah.
And if you're in a situation like Nathan Walker, there's no guarantee that you get that money that you're talking about, Alex. It's possible he could.
Right.
It's also possible he gets hurt this year. And in the event that he gets hurt, he might never play another game in the NHL. That's always right on the other side when you're 30-plus years old as a fringe fourth liner in the NHL. So for him, I think it's about certainty. Meanwhile, if you're somebody like a Dylan Holloway, man, I don't need certainty. I need upside. He's seeing what it looks like when you get hurt. Sure, yeah, but I'm a stud player, and I'm in my early 20s. I'm thinking about how much money can I make and when can I get to that place where I make the greatest sum of money possible.
Right.
That's when you learn a little bit. And that won't even be next offseason. That'll be the next contract after the first one that he signs when we really find out, because that's when he'll hit free agency, not RFA status where you can't really compete with any other teams out there yet.
Yeah, that's when the cap will be $200 million too, though, so I'm not worried about that. They'll be printing money at that time in the NHL.
He's Alex, that's T-Bone, I'm BK. It's BK and Ferrario here on 101 ESPN. In 15 minutes, Major League Baseball has a real issue on its hands heading into the 2027 season. Is that the year that the owners and the players are truly going to be willing to miss a year in order to implement the cap? We'll talk about that in 15 minutes. But coming up next, we're going to dive into some NFL quick hitters, including tonight's Thursday night football game and what we're expecting from that one. That's all coming up here on BK and Ferrario.
Tanner Hendrickson here to tell you about my friends at DraftKings Sportsbook, America's top-rated sportsbook app, which is coming soon here to the Show Me State. Starting November 17th, you can create your DraftKings Sportsbook account here in Missouri and get ready for launch day on December 1st. So you new Missouri customers, download that DraftKings Sportsbook app today, and when we go live, you can place just a $5 bet to unlock $300 in bonus bets. DraftKings Sportsbook is going to bring everything you need to elevate your game day, including live and game betting, lightning fast payouts, and endless ways to get in on the action, all right from your phone. And when we officially go live here in Missouri, you'll be betting with the Sportsbook app trusted by millions. Safe, secure, and has fast money withdrawals. So download the DraftKings Sportsbook app now and grab $300 in bonus bets with just a $5 bet when we go live December 1st in partnership with DraftKings Sportsbook. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. 21 plus. Physically present in Missouri. Eligibility restrictions apply. Bonus bets expire 7 days after issuance. Excludes customers who redeem pre-launch sign-up offer. Terms at sportsbook.draftkings.com/promos.
Live from Blues training camp at the Centene Community Ice Center, this is BK and Ferrario on 101 ESPN. Brought to you by Bud Light, Skimmer's Original Vodka Iced Tea, and E&B Granite, Bernie Federko's only choice for granite countertops, cabinets, and flooring.
Alongside Alex and T-Bone, I'm BK. You got BK and Ferrario here on 101 ESPN. Alex, big game tonight in the NFL. Thursday night football returns, and you can get in on the action over on Underdog. Use that promo code BKO to sign up today.
Do it right now.
Dolphins versus the Bills. Bills an 11.5-point home favorite in this one, Alex. 11.5
I
points.
think that's, if we were doing our pick'em and that was this weekend, I'd take the Bills on the points. I'm so done with Miami.
I think I would take the Dolphins plus 11.5. That's a really big line on a Thursday.
That's fine, but Miami can't throw the ball or play defense.
Let me look into my crystal ball and tell you what the headline is tomorrow morning. Mike McDaniel out at Miami.
You think?
Yeah, I think they get blown out tonight.
Yeah.
So
Dolphins in shambles.
Yeah, Dolphins. They've quit on McDaniel. Let's be honest. He's out the door on
Tyreek
Friday.
Hill was complaining to his
He's going to scan his key card. It's not going
coach
to work.
on the bench after week one of the first quarter.
The only reason I don't think he's going to get fired is because their next 2 weeks are New York Jets at the Carolina Panthers, and those are potentially winnable games.
Perfect
If you
time for a
lose
coach
those games, then I think you fire him probably after that game against the Carolina Panthers. I think they end up keeping this one a little closer than people are anticipating. I don't think it's like a particularly close game, but it could be 31-14 with 5 minutes to go. Dolphins score a meaningless touchdown, and you lose your cover. That's what's really annoying about this kind of a spread. So I would personally lean Dolphins plus the 11.5. That doesn't mean I love them tonight. I absolutely do not. I do like in any kind of daily fantasy, if you're doing a full weekend long thing or a regular fantasy match, I think Achane's a great play tonight. He is going up against a Bills defense that has not been particularly good at stopping the run so far this year. I also actually do like Tua, Tyreek. I think those guys are in an interesting spot here because they're very likely going to be down big, and so they'll just be throwing all game long. So I think there's the potential for some points on the Dolphin side of things in fantasy. If you were looking for a survivor pick this week, this is around the time where I like to start locking those in, Alex, is this time of the week. The Bills are a perfectly fine choice. I don't see a way in which they lose this game tonight, even if I think it's maybe going to be a little closer than the spread is expecting it to be. Do you guys have a team that you've landed on for Survivor this week for anybody that's still alive? I
was just talking to you during the break. I think the two teams that I've fallen on were the Seahawks at home against the Saints and the Buccaneers at home against the Jets. Jets don't have Justin Fields. Saints have Spencer Rattler. So that was my line of thinking. And I think I'm going to go more Seattle. I don't know how much winning they're going to do the rest of the season. And so I feel like if it's a team that I'm not sure is going to win a lot, but they've got a real good chance to win now, let's take that team and get it out of the way.
I don't have a lot of concern with the Bucs. They're at home. It's not a divisional game. Those are two good spots for me. That's what I personally look for in a survivor pick. The fear, though, is Ekbuka has not practiced this week. It sounds like he's dealing with some kind of a groin and another ailment on his leg. I don't know if he's going to play. Not a great sign if you're the Bucs. You only have basically one weapon at that point in time. And they lost one of their offensive linemen. So they're now down for at least this week 3 of their 5 starting offensive linemen. So down 3 linemen, down potentially one of your top 2 receivers. I don't love the spot for them as much as I want to. And since I have a clear alternative with the Seahawks, that's my lean. I really like the Seahawks at home against what I think is a pretty bad Saints team. I don't really see many reasons to not like the Saints this weekend, or Seahawks this weekend, rather.
Yeah, I like the Seahawks. They're probably my number 1 play if you're looking for like one more here. But it scares me because it's on the road. If you haven't used the Packers at Browns, they should dominate that game. Joe Flacco ain't running away from Micah Parsons. He can barely run. But it's on the road, which makes me a little less like I would avoid it if you can. Surely you haven't taken the Seahawks, I wouldn't think.
That's the thing,
through the first 2 weeks. But if for some reason you did, because, hey, more power to you. Packers would be my second lean.
The other thing with the Packers, I do think you could potentially use them in the next few weeks. Like this week, and they're on the road at Cleveland. Cleveland has a great pass rush. I don't anticipate that they'll win that game, but it's one element that I don't like is being on the road there. They've got at Dallas next week. Again, road game wouldn't be my personal preference, but 2 weeks from then, you've got Cincinnati with Jake Browning behind center and no defense whatsoever there. I would definitely consider using them in that spot. I would consider using them November 2nd against Carolina as well, and then you've got it against the New York Giants later on. Like, there are just some very clear spots that I would love to use the Packers that I don't feel the need to use them in this spot against Cleveland.
I'd love to use them against Dallas because I think Parsons is going to make Dak Prescott and Jerry Jones' life miserable.
All right, next thing up here. Is this the biggest Chiefs game in years? Chiefs on the road this weekend.
God.
At the New York Giants. Let me give you the sell on this. If the Chiefs lose this game, nobody can convince you that it's going to get better. There's no convincing you. This is a team you have to beat because on the horizon, you've got the Ravens at home and then on the road at Jacksonville and then home against the Detroit Lions. If you lose this game, they might lose all of those, So if you win it, at least then there's tangible results to point to. And then you'll be like, all right, well, the first 2 games were actually just a 1-score loss. And they have all of these injuries offensively. Maybe getting Xavier Worthy back this weekend, that was the thing that allows them to stay afloat prior to Rashee Rice's return. And then they'll be fine after week 6. I can at least sell myself on that. If you lose this weekend, and by the way, I don't like the matchup. It's not a good one. The Giants have a very good pass rush. Chiefs offensive line hasn't been great. Giants have a very good deep ball game, as we saw last week when I lost that Cowboys bet on our show.
You hate to see it.
And the Chiefs' biggest issue right now defensively, they can't cover the deep ball because they don't have a good pass rush to get home, and their corners are getting mossed with regularity. So I don't love the matchup, but do you guys agree with the premise? This is the biggest Chiefs game in a regular season scenario that we've seen in years because there's actual stakes. There's actual tangible. If you don't win this, then there's a problem here for the Chiefs.
I 100% agree with you because if you lose this game to the Giants, I don't see how you're beating the Ravens, the Lions, and even the Jaguars. To me is a 50-50 game. And if you're not playing well and you don't have your weapons, how do I view that on the road in Jacksonville? So, yeah, you lose this one, there's a chance you go 0-6 in the first 6 games, which I don't know how you sit there and even though you still think they can get in, it's hard to believe going 0-6 with losses to the Giants and Jaguars.
Yeah, I think I would agree. I was thinking back to, I don't know if it was last year or a couple years ago, they had a game against either like Buffalo or Baltimore, and it was like, hey, winner gets the 1 seed essentially. But like
It didn't matter.
Yeah, it didn't matter.
Still a playoff team.
Well, yeah, they got to the playoffs, and then they ended up getting to the Super Bowl. So it didn't ultimately matter. It didn't matter if they were on the road or at home. This one, like, I can at least look at the first 2 games and go, okay, yeah, the Chargers look like one of the best teams in the AFC. Okay, yeah, you just lost to the Eagles, but, they're the defending Super Bowl champs. They returned a lot of their offense. I can at least look at that and go, okay, that might have been your opponent. You're a little shorthanded. I mean, the G-Men? Like, you lose to the G-Men, even though it's on the road? Yeah, I will be officially on the, hey, I've been worried about them. Yeah, they're still a playoff team. Things just don't look right. They lose to the G-Men. I might be realistically looking at them go, boy, this may not get better, and they are suddenly looking like a fringe playoff team.
Do you guys care at all what happens in that Bengals versus Vikings game?
Nope.
Is that the least compelling football game that we've seen in a while?
That is going to be some
I guess Steelers-Pats isn't all that compelling
I was
either.
going to say.
Yeah, but at least you got an interesting quarterback. It's a brutal quarterback play in the Vikings and Bengals game.
Oh, my gosh. This noon slate is as bad as the 3 o'clock slate was last week. Have you taken a look at this?
It's bad.
Packers, Browns, Colts versus Titans, Bengals versus Vikings, Steelers versus Patriots, Jets versus Bucks, Raiders versus maybe the Jaden Daniels list Commanders, Falcons, Panthers, and then Texans, Jags. We have one game, and it's what they want you to watch on TV, Rams versus the Eagles.
Yeah. I'm glad I'm voting this weekend.
I was going to say, I got 2 Blues games this weekend, so I'll be able to focus on the prospects in action rather than watch Browning and what's his face going and McCarthy going head to head.
Oh, McCarthy ain't playing.
Oh, that's right. Oh, God.
It's worse.
Oh.
2 backup quarterbacks, man.
This is the week that Justin Jefferson demands a trade.
Oh, my God. They said he looked great at practice this week.
Wentz or
Carson
Jefferson?
Wentz.
They better hope Jefferson looked great at practice.
Suddenly Jefferson's playing quarterback. He's like, nah, man.
No.
Wentz, get out there.
Jefferson better have added like 35 pounds this week so we can muscle everybody off of him with a fly ball down the field. Fly ball through the air is what I meant.
Do you guys have a lean in the Rams versus the Eagles game right now?
I think Rams win.
Really? On the road?
But I don't know if that's because I'm a
Yeah,
homer.
I was gonna say, I still think it's the Eagles.
I just think their offenses look really good. And I think their defense is going to hold up okay against the Eagles. Because BK always brings up his concern about the Rams defense. I've never had as much worries about it.
I worried about the defense.
What are you worried about in preseason?
Yeah.
Preseason doesn't matter, man.
Yeah, but the rosters do.
What?
You're overreacting in preseason, man. Wait till the season begins.
I don't overreact to a player that we didn't expect anything from suddenly emerging in preseason action.
Oh, man, you told us.
Doing something that we didn't see.
Told us you're even keel. You're right in the
the
middle.
Rams roster, when I looked at it on the depth chart, it didn't look good to me. Now I have seen it for multiple weeks in the regular season, and it's looked very good so far. Yeah, that would be my very brief explanation on that, Alex.
And they're more explosive than the Eagles right now.
That's true.
I agree with you on the Eagles. Bradford made me for a minute question if I was overreacting, as I'm known to do. When I came into the office after they beat the Chiefs, I'm like, guys, the Eagles, they don't look good. I know they're 2-0, but they just don't look like the same team.
I'm still not worried about them because, again, they can flip the switch, man.
So I agree with Alex. I don't know what to make of what happened last week. So I could be one of 2 things. One, this is just the Eagles, and they've got some stuff to work out. I do agree with that, T-Bone. Or 2, they looked at that Chiefs team and the way that they had played in week 1 and kind of how they're currently situated and said, hey, the only way we lose this game is if we commit a turnover. If we give the Chiefs points, if we hand this to them, we can lose. But otherwise, we're not losing this game. So get yourself 3 yards of play, push on 4th down, boom, extend the drive. Hold the ball as long as you can, make a few stops defensively, you get out of there with a win. They posted 200 yards of total offense. 200. It was one of the lowest outputs against the Chiefs in 3 years defensively. The Chiefs defense actually showed some stuff last week against the Eagles. They averaged 3.5 yards per play. So there are some legit questions to ask on the Eagles. If they didn't have, the previous history that we saw from them a year ago, I would be really worried about their offense. But because they have some of that history, it makes me wonder what we're going to see this weekend, because you're going to need more than what you saw last week against the Chiefs if they're going to beat the Rams this weekend at home.
Yeah, and I always have a tough time with teams like the Eagles, the Cardinals in baseball were this for a couple of years under Mike Schilt. These teams that always are sluggish for the very beginning. Everybody's, don't worry about it. They'll flip the switch. Okay, but what happens when they flip that switch and that light bulb doesn't come on, right? I've seen that before for teams. That's why I have a tough time reading them right now. They may ultimately be fine. And it may just be like you're saying, they went up against the Chiefs. They knew they could just kind of just don't turn the ball over, we'll beat them. Their offense isn't very good. Or there are actual concerns with the Philadelphia Eagles, and they are not the best team in the NFC. They're still a playoff team. That is no question. But are they a legitimate contender in this version of the NFC?
Or at least the contender, right? Like
Sure.
right now, I think it is fair to say Packers are the best team in the NFC. But if somebody wanted to argue with me and said, no, it's the Eagles until proven otherwise, I get that. That's fair. We can have our disagreements here. We could go tit for tat, but eventually, yes, you do have history on your side, recently at least. So I get that. If they lose this weekend and don't look up to snuff against the Rams, it's going to be hard to make that argument. And yes, they could still be a contender for the Super Bowl by the end of the year. Maybe Alex has proven correct, and they figure this stuff out. They flip the switch just the way that the Chiefs did last year, and they end up getting back to the Super Bowl. But it will be the first indication to me, hey, this isn't just some weird 2-week stretch where they're like holding stuff back. There might actually be things that they need to work through, and it could take, 10, 15 weeks before we get to the fully formed version of the Eagles. And in that scenario, I think it's more than fair to say, you know what, the Packers and the Rams might be better today than the Eagles are, and those should be in any kind of a power ranking, the teams that are at the top of the NFC. Coming up in 15 minutes, we're going to dive into the junk drawer, but next, is it worth it for Major League Baseball to miss the entirety of the 2027 season just to implement a salary cap? We'll let you hear what Jeff Passan's piece had to say about that coming up next year on 101 ESPN.
101 ESPN Sports Center.
I'm Jordan Deacon. This Sports Center update is brought to you by Saliga Heating and Cooling. Yesterday, the Cardinals lost by a score of 6-2 to the Cincinnati Reds. They are off today and opening a series against the Brewers tomorrow. First pitch at Busch Stadium is at 7:15. And as for the Blues, they are back in action, finally taking on training camp at Centene Community Ice Center. Hopefully, the guys will be able to pull a player sometime soon. I'm Jordan Deacon. The Sports Center update was brought to you by Saliga Heating and Cooling, a Daikin heating and air conditioning dealer.
PK and Ferrario are broadcasting live from Blues training camp at the Centene Community Ice Center. Brought to you by Bud Light, Skimmer's Original Vodka Iced Tea, and E&B Granite, Bernie Federko's only choice for granite countertops, cabinets, and flooring.
All right, Alex, so are you annoyed yet about talking about salary cap in Major League Baseball? Because
Yes, but also I think it needs to happen. So I'm annoyed, but God, do I want it to happen.
we're roughly a year away from this seriously becoming a conversation. With Alex Ferrario, I'm Brandon Kiley. T-Bone over it at the end of day one of training camp. He's going to grab some audio from Jim Montgomery, see if we can get a player to come over and join us in studio at some point as well. So ESPN.com, Jeff Passan specifically, had a great piece earlier today on the looming battle between Major League Baseball and the Players Association over the implementation of a salary cap. I'm going to read some of this here for you guys now. I recommend the full piece. It's worth your time. Currently, sources said, the LA Dodgers are carrying a $340 million payroll. Because the Dodgers have exceeded every threshold of the league's luxury tax, they owe an additional $170 million. In other words, more than what the St. Louis Cardinals are paying for their actual payroll. I continue. The Dodgers' total projected outlay of $510 million is just a few $1 million shy of the combined payrolls of the game's 6 lowest spending teams, including Miami, the Athletics, Tampa Bay, the Chicago White Sox, Pittsburgh, and Cleveland. The Dodgers will pay more in penalties than 16 different Major League Baseball teams do for their entire roster. Jeff Passan continues. As much as Major League Baseball wants a salary cap now, multiple owners said that they believe the only real path to getting one would require them missing the entirety of the 2027 season. And as unpalatable as that is to the players, it is similarly so to owners, not just because of what they'd lose out on today, but the money that they would cede in the future. Quote, how do we compete? One mid-sized market team president said, we try to do everything right. We draft well, we develop well, and then we get the you-know-what kicked out of us by clubs that buy their players. It feels like the game is rigged. That all coming from Jeff Passan's piece over on ESPN.com earlier today. Alex, I think baseball does need a cap. I think that players have arrived in a place, and after reading this piece, I continue to feel the same way, although he did present some information on the other side of this argument. I think players are being stubborn because they've never accepted the cap. There have been times in the past where, most times really, it would not have been good for players to accept a cap. I think we have arrived at a different place in the game. Our entire lives have changed from what they were 30 years ago. Things that made sense for us then do not make sense for us now, and vice versa. I think we have arrived at a place where baseball, for everybody involved, it makes sense to implement a cap. This will increase the value of the younger players. It will increase the value, I believe, of your 23rd man on the roster. And yes, maybe some guys end up making slightly less than what they would have otherwise. Maybe Juan Soto or Kyle Tucker or Shohei Ohtani, the top of Major League Baseball, maybe instead of making that $600 million contract, they make $300 million. But with the rest of the game rising up a level, I personally view that as being worth it. I know some would argue otherwise, but what are we arguing here? Are we arguing for 5 guys that are at the top of the sport, or are we arguing for the other, 25 players on every single roster in baseball?
Yeah.
That's the side that I would personally lean toward. So I think it is worth it to get a cap, but the real question is not whether or not this is the right idea. The question is it worth missing a season over?
Right.
And that's where, to me, it becomes a differing argument.
And I totally get that because, man, that's not an easy thing to do. And you're talking about having to make up ground in Major League Baseball if you miss an entire season to win back your fans. But I think it's worth it. I mean, I go back to that, and I was 14 years old at the time, but that 2004-2005 NHL lockout, that was when they agreed on the salary cap to where they made it more competitive. And again, it took them a while to get back because NHL was already the lower of a majority of the pro sports leagues. But the health of the NHL has significantly grown when that salary cap was implemented. Now, it took 15 plus years, but it did get to that point. The problem is if you say, well, it's not worth it by missing an entire year, is, well, then you're not going to get a salary cap. And if you don't get a salary cap, this same issue is going to continue to pop up to where you said there were 16 teams that are paying less than what the Dodgers are paying in terms of taxes on paying over the amount of money.
So 16, to simplify this, 16 different teams in Major League Baseball are paying less for their roster than what the Dodgers are in tax penalties.
Yes.
So they're not actually paying this money towards any players. It is going as revenue to Major League Baseball as a penalty for them basically saying, hey, you're spending too much. Because you're spending that amount, for every dollar you spend, 50 cents comes to us. And the Dodgers are sending all of those 50 cents, and they add up to more than 16 different teams' payroll. That's
a problem. And that will only get worse until a salary cap shows up. And so for the health of Major League Baseball, because there's no parity with it. Like, you just have the same few teams with a couple that sneak in, but you know what's going to happen once the postseason rolls around. I think you want to make this an even playing field, and that salary cap does that. It creates more excitement for those bottom dwellers, or really just the excitement for the teams in the middle. So, yeah, I think missing an entire year is worth it if it creates stronger health for the league, because the NHL, they had one more lockout, which was in 12 and 13, which was a half a season. And that was more because the owners wanted more. They wanted more. I'm probably going to botch this, but they wanted more control in terms of the money that the players were getting. I think it was like 57% or something like that. But once that was resolved, they've had salary cap peace. They've had negotiation peace since.
That's going to be the problem. They can't agree on what the pie is. Forget how we split up the pie. They can't agree on what is involved in the pie.
But the hope is you get the salary cap, and then the next CBA, you get that decided.
You can't split money that you don't agree on what you're splitting. If you and I, Alex, went into a partnership on some kind of a business, and our revenues were, let's just make it super easy, $100 million, and we said we're splitting this 50-50, we would each get $50 million. Here's the problem. If we had that business and we disagreed on what the actual dollar figure is for that revenue, if we have split 50-50, but you say we made $100 million and I say, no, we made $50 million, we have differing agreements on where the starting point is. And that is the problem for Major League Baseball and the Players Association right now, is that baseball will say, hey, just as one example of this, Ballpark Village, that is not baseball-related revenue. That is a separate entity entirely. It is not something that is specifically tickets or directly related to our revenues from a baseball game taking place. The players would argue, all right, let's go ahead and take a look at when those areas, Ballpark Village, the Battery down in Atlanta, most places have something like that now. Let's take a look at when those places are busiest. I would be willing to bet it is associated with games being played. And if there is a direct correlation between the two things, that is baseball-related revenue. Now, you can choose which side you're on in these arguments, but it is an argument. And until they agree upon what the money is that they can split, you can't actually get to any sort of a solution. And this is why I have serious reservations on missing a season, because I don't know what the end point is. How do you get to a place where you agree on anything if you can't even agree on the starting point? It is much like our politics nowadays, and I'm not going to get into it, but people can't agree on the starting point, much less what the solutions are on things. So it's the same thing with Major League Baseball right now. Yes, we can all agree. You need to do this. There needs to be changes that are implemented. But how?
Yeah.
The devil's always in the details, and that's the case for Major League Baseball.
And that's the hard part with this stuff. But to me, it's like you're never going to resolve that how or the starting point until you have something that puts both sides on alert. And unfortunately, that might be missing an entire season.
Yeah.
If you don't miss an entire season.
But if you're the players, I'm arguing more and more against it. If we continue to get to this place where you're not allowing for me to include those revenue streams in it, because at some point it's like, well, we're already missing time. Now, if you're telling me the only way that we can get back to games is with a salary cap, all right, well, if we're going to do that, we're going to start at a place where we're getting all of the revenues included, because once you agree to something smaller than that, you don't suddenly go back to the table and get more of the revenues. Yep. It's gone the opposite way for the NHL, for Major League Baseball, for the NBA. Their percentages go down over the years of the total revenues. So if you're the players, you better get every part of the revenues involved, because your percentage will almost certainly go down over the years.
Yeah, and but again, to get to that point, you're going to have to get to the table at some time. And the problem is, if you just keep saying, like, nope, we're not going to do the salary cap, and you just get into an argument, and then you say, fine, we'll just deal with it down the road, we're going to get to this point again in 3 years, 4 years, 5 years, whatever that next CBA. You're going to continue to have this problem because people are going to continue to say this league needs a salary cap.
314-399-9646 is the Air Covered Service X line from the 314. Guys, is this about having a cap or having a floor? It depends who you ask. Major League Baseball players would love to have a floor without a cap. Major League Baseball owners would love to have a cap without a floor. And neither of them want to agree to both. So
this is the office, the win-win-win.
The answer is yes. It is about both of those things. But it depends on which side you're asking as to which one is more necessary. I personally believe that you can't have a cap without a floor, and you also can't have a floor without a cap. Both things are necessary. Now, what would that floor be? What would the ceiling look like? I have no idea. That, once again, is one of those details that is difficult. Also, how do you incorporate this? Like, the Dodgers already have contracts that are long-term on their books.
Yeah.
Do you just say, hey, you have a designated player association? Like, Shohei Ohtani doesn't count against your books. All right, cool. We still have $250 million that are associated with long-term expenses on our books right now, and you're telling me that the cap is $200 million. So how do we get to that? The New York Mets are spending $337 million on their payroll this year. Meanwhile, you have a team like, for example, the Chicago White Sox spending $77 million. So how do the White Sox get up to a floor quickly if the floor is going to be, I don't know, $150 million, right? How do they incorporate $80 million to their books without getting themselves into a spot where they're stuck with terrible long-term deals? So all of this is a reminder. Does baseball need a cap? I believe yes. Does baseball need to miss a season in order to do so? That, I think, is pretty dicey. Do I think that this is even possible for them to come to any agreement upon?
No.
I don't think so, man. No. I don't know how you get there.
I'm definitive on that. If you want a cap, then you're going to have to miss a year, because for how stern each side is in their own thoughts and beliefs, there's no negotiating right now. This CBA is just, nope, we're not doing it. Nope, we're not doing it. All right, cool. Then we're not talking. Yeah. Like we saw it a couple of years ago with COVID. This is going to get nastier. So yeah, if you believe that the league needs a salary cap, then the only way you're going to get there is most likely, I'm like 99.9% sure, you're going to have to miss an entire season.
And I don't think that's good for baseball.
It's not good for any league.
I think having a cap is a good thing, personally. I think missing a year to do so is an absolute disaster.
In the short term, but in the long term, it might be the healthiest it can be for Major League Baseball.
I don't agree with that. I don't. I think that in the long term, it's going to take years to recover from that, man. And this sport is in a good spot right now. San Diego, which I never thought I would be able to say this about, has an average of 42,000 fans per night in the stands right now. You know what happens if you end up losing a year of the prime of Manny Machado and Fernando Tatis Jr.? You
lose about 30,000 of those fans.
Yeah, things change quickly. Mm-hmm. And then if you get a cap, there's no guarantee that they get back to this. And that's despite you've missed a season. The Cardinals, I have no idea what it's going to take for them to recover from their current situation. Now imagine a year of no baseball downtown. Oh, boy. Suddenly the spending habits change in a serious way for people around this town. And beyond that, think about what that does. We're just talking right now on the baseball side of things. Now look at the human side of things. What does that do for downtown here in St. Louis?
Oh, yeah.
We don't have let's just be honest, man. There ain't a whole lot going on down there.
No.
One of the very few draws to go downtown is Busch. And if you lack that for an entire summer where there's 80 dates this year there's 20,000 fans a night. Let's call that in terms of real 27,000 a night. Real attendance, 17, 18. over the course of 80 games, that's a lot of traffic that's going downtown because of Busch Stadium. If that's gone, it has a real effect on the businesses that are operating within the downtown area. So this goes well beyond just the baseball side of things. There's a lot to all of these discussions, and baseball has a real problem on its hands.
Oh, yeah.
And we're just about a calendar year away from them becoming sizable.
That is one thing we are all in agreement on. Baseball's in a bad spot.
Coming up in 10 minutes, Jimmy Snuggerud self-scouting. It might be the exact thing that allows him to have the success we're all hoping for this season. We'll tell you about that in 10 minutes. The Junk Drawer is coming up next here on 101 ESPN.
from Blues training camp at the Centene Community Ice Center, this is BK and Ferrario on 101 ESPN. Brought to you by Bud Light, Skimmer's Original Vodka Iced Tea, and E&B Granite, Bernie Federko's only choice for granite countertops, cabinets, and flooring. Let's open it up. The Junk Drawer with BK and Ferrario.
Alongside Alex Ferrario, I'm Brandon Kiley. It's BK and Ferrario here on 101 ESPN. So, Alex, I've got a question for you. Have you ever tried to do like some kind of a side gig where you're like selling something on the side, or you're using Facebook Marketplace as a side hustle, whatever it may be? Have you ever had a side gig?
No, you see that stuff online all the time of like, oh, hey, create your own side hustle with Amazon of like your wish list or something. I've thought about it, but I've never actually sat down to do it. My wife used to sell like Mary Kay and things like that on the side, but did not like it, did not have success with it, so she stopped and obviously focused on where she's at now. But I've always thought about it. But then I also realized once I think about it, it's like, I don't even have time to even attempt this.
Well, an Akron public school employee was suspended at the latest school board meeting on Monday after selling the school's lawnmowers on Facebook Marketplace. He took side hustle in a new direction. Here is the story, according to an ABC report out of Cleveland, Ohio. Quote, according to the agenda from the school board meeting, Administrator Stephen Keenan traded in 11 different lawnmowers to a vendor without the board's approval so that he could buy new lawnmowers. He then bought 7 of the traded in mowers under a friends and family discount with the vendor, according to the agenda. He ended up paying about $6,000 for the mowers. The agenda said that Keenan then listed 5 of those 7 mowers on sale at the Facebook Marketplace. He asked for a total sales price of roughly $15,000.
Damn.
The school board, under a recommendation from the superintendent, is considering firing Keenan because he violated the staff's code.
Yeah, why are you even considering it? Get rid of this guy. I mean, props to you for trying
to not think this was going to come back on you.
This is just one of those dummies that just like has an idea, says, I'm in a rough spot, I need money, I'm going to do this. You know that's coming back to bite you. But what? It's not like you could keep the money.
$10,000?
Yeah, but it's not like you could keep the money when you get caught. Like, you got to give the money back, so you're going to get fired, and you're not going to get any money from it.
Yeah, I don't think he thought about it that far.
No.
I think it was just, hey, man, I'm going to get rich quick.
Yep.
Somebody on the text line, Mahomes Longbody, says, the image in my brain of Alex making charcuterie boards on the side has me rolling. What would be your side thing that you would be most likely capable of doing, much less willing to do?
God, I don't even know. Like, I have no idea. Like, because everything you see online that says like, oh, start your own side gig of where it's like, you create this page of different things that you use so other people will be interested in buying it. And it's like, okay, but I don't use anything that other people would want or something. So, so I built Katie a picnic bench for Mother's Day last year. And I looked at her when I built it because I love doing that stuff. And I told her, I said, man, this would be cool to like build and then sell. But that was when I had the pile of lumber in my backyard. And I'm like, this won't take me long. It took me a month to put it together. And I'm like, no. Next thing you know, I got 15 inquiries. And I'm like, oh, I don't know when I'm doing these. So if it were to be something, it would be like that, to where like, give me a pile of lumber. I'll build like Adirondack chairs or a picnic bench or some type of like planter thing that people can sell on Etsy or whatever. But again, I don't have the commitment to do it. So that's the problem.
My wife had the idea during this, like COVID and then a little bit beyond. She had like a cookie company that she was a part of. So she would make the typical sugar cookies, but then she would go in and decorate all of them. Dude, those things are expensive.
Oh, yeah.
First of all, expensive to make and extremely expensive to sell. And more importantly, they take forever to make. And so she would get an order at the beginning of the week, and then she would take, 2 to 3 nights to be able to do them. I was like, Kara, we can't keep doing this, man. Like, this is not making you enough money to make it worthy of all of our time. So she doesn't do that anymore. But that was her side hustle.
Somebody just said the 314, I make cabinets out of old whiskey barrels. I wish I was that talented. And 314, if you're talking like kitchen cabinets, you and I need to have a conversation because I need new cabinets. And That's the stuff that I'm not creative enough with. That, God, I love when people refurbish things and turn it into something that you can use now.
He's Alex Ferrario. I'm Brandon Kiley. Jordan Deacon back in the studio for us today. We're broadcasting live at the E&B Granite Studios out of the Centene Community Ice Center, where T-Bone just spoke with Jim Montgomery. Did want to pass along a few things from him. We have the full audio that we'll play for you a little bit of in a little bit here on BK and Ferrario, but he said the biggest takeaways from Montgomery: loved the defensive play of Mayu, has a great stick. Holloway doesn't look like he lost a step, has great energy, and hopes that can be contagious for the Blues. We are hoping to get a player coming up shortly here on the show.
T-Bone's on the prowl.
Next, we continue talking about the St. Louis Blues. Jimmy Snuggerud's self-scouting could put him in position to have success in 2025. We'll tell you about it next year on 101 ESPN.
BK and Ferrario are broadcasting live from Blues training camp at the Centene Community Ice Center. Brought to you by Bud Light, Skimmer's Original Vodka Iced Tea, and E&B Granite, Bernie Federko's only choice for granite countertops, cabinets, and flooring.
Alongside Alex Ferrario, I'm Brandon Kiley, hoping to have a Blues player joining us in studio momentarily. Jimmy Snuggerud joined us yesterday in studio, Alex, and I was impressed by the way that he answered one of our questions. We asked him, hey, what did you learn from your brief experience at the NHL level a year ago? Here's what Jimmy Snuggerud had to say.
I mean, the regular season games are so different from playoff games alone. To be able to kind of come in and meet all those guys was super special. And, you learn that you really need to put on size as a player. That's the one thing that I kind of took out of it most, is I was kind of a light little guy out there. Be able to add weight this summer is definitely a major factor. And, the playoff games were so fun. Obviously, it didn't end the way we wanted to, but even just seeing St. Louis so pumped up alone in those home games, and to be able to play in Winnipeg and kind of experience all the 14 games regular season playoffs alone was super special and fun, and there's so much to learn from.
Alex, I love this part of it. Learning what guys think they need to work on, that's so much more important than what we think they all should work on. So self-scouting is a huge part of improvement at the NHL level. Every year you're trying to get better. Hell, anything that you do in life, you're always doing some version of self-scouting to try to improve yourself at it. And it was pretty clear, talking with Jimmy Snuggerud both on and off air, he thought that was the most important thing. He needed to get bigger. He needed to get stronger in order to adjust to the NHL level. It's a little different than going up against 18 to 22-year-olds in college. What do you think that can do for him as he gets into the 2025 season?
What I think it can do is, first of all, him understanding what you need for a full season is like the best thing a coach can hear. Like him recognizing what he did last year. Because, look, Jimmy Snuggerud performed well last year. Him recognizing that I'm not strong enough and I need to get stronger as a goal scorer, that's huge, because you're taking the initiative of saying, I want to be good in other areas rather than just goal scoring. But on top of what he did at the end of last year and kind of just the way he's talking about it, I was looking the other night, just kind of the first few games of Jimmy Snuggerud and then the last stretch. So in the first 4 games, he averaged about 2 shot attempts per game. And that's typical. You get kind of the hesitant player in their first couple of minutes in the NHL. In the final 10 games, he averaged 5 shot attempts per game. So to me, that's a guy that's understanding. It's like, okay, here's what I'm doing on the ice. Here's how I can get better. And here's how I find more space as a goal scorer. So what he learned from last year and what he took into this offseason, and just the short conversation we had with him, is, okay, I know I can score goals at the NHL level. What do I do to make my game all around better so that if I'm a top-line player, I can bring that to the table? And, man, as a coach, I have to imagine that is the best thing you can hear from a player going into the offseason.
It's so great to hear, man, because it tells you this kid can feel what he needs to at the NHL level. He can take in not necessarily criticism, but I would say just a guy that he can take in coaching. And he can adjust from it. And just use the Cardinals comparison, just because that's what we have here locally. This is Alec Burleson, right? Yeah. Alec Burleson came in. It was clear, all right, I need to get more athletic. I need to change my approach at the plate. I have to be a little bit more disciplined with what I'm going after to be able to do damage at the plate. Those are the 3 biggest things for me. And if I can do those 3 things, I can have success at this level. There are a lot of guys that are just stubborn and say, no, I'm not changing. This is who I am. Maybe Snuggerud goes into an offseason in a different world, and a different version of that player says, no, I'm not gaining weight. That's ridiculous. I play this way. This is what I'm comfortable with. Exactly. I float. That's my thing. And instead, he took it to heart and he made the changes that were necessary. And I know we both saw the first session today. Listen, it's one practice. You don't want to take too much from any of this stuff. He looked like one of the best players on the ice.
Agreed.
He was flying up and down the ice. He looked incredibly comfortable. So I think that's a huge thing for both him and for the Blues. And it is one breadcrumb. It's the first of what needs to be a series of moments that could lead to the drumbeat of excitement leading into its 2025 season.
I'm not making this comparison, so please hear me out on this one. But
oh boy,
Joey and I have had these conversations in the past with Alex Steen. And Steen has always talked about, what makes Kirill Kaprizov so great? It's not his ability to score goals from wherever he's at on the ice. It's his ability to win every single puck battle he goes into the corner with. People don't want to go into a one-on-one scrum with him because they know they're going to have to pay the price. And I'm not saying Snuggerud's going to be that. Snuggerud's got a shot that could score it anywhere on the ice. Like, that's pro scouts have said he's got an NHL elite shot. But the difference between Kirill Kaprizov and just any other goal scorer in the National Hockey League is Kaprizov wants that puck. He will win that puck battle. And if Jimmy Snuggerud takes that element to his game, that's what makes a 20 to 25 goal scorer who's just a floater out there that can score when he gets the opportune time, and makes him a 40-plus goal scorer because he says, I want the puck on my stick, and I will win every single puck battle that happens.
All right, so Jimmy Snuggerud is a big part of the team's present and future, and this is where we go to Dom's latest piece over on The Athletic.
No. Don't bring down my vibe on day one of training camp.
So it's a very complicated thing to describe without seeing the graphic. So if you want to check this out, go over to The Athletic, and you can see it there. But he rates every team based upon where they are currently, and based upon their future rating as well. So present rating and future rating. And then he puts you on a grid on what that means. Is your window opening? Is your window closing? Are you a team that is in a rebuild? Where are you at? And he did the same thing a year ago. So he tracks where they were versus where they are right now. Last year, he had the Blues in a very clear time to rebuild. Your window has closed. That's where they were. And I think that's right. That's where they felt as though they were going into the season. As of today, he has them, and Alex, don't respond too poorly on this, he has them in what he considers to be no man's land. Now, that doesn't mean that they are just meandering in the wilderness. Other teams in this area include Ottawa, the Minnesota Wild, and the Boston Bruins. All of those teams are kind of heading in different directions for different reasons. The idea here is that the Blues currently feel as though they have a lot of good players, but he's wondering, do they have the ceiling that is necessary to truly contend? Which is really the question we've also been asking about the St. Louis Blues. Can you take that next step without any of these players inside of your organization currently becoming that future star? Without a guy like a Jimmy Snuggerud or Dylan Holloway going from good to truly great and spectacular players. Alex, how do you feel about that rating of where the Blues are at right now? Feeling as though currently they're in no man's land with the potential, though, to be something more.
I understand where he's coming from. I would disagree with it, which shouldn't surprise anybody, but I would have them in the same category as Detroit and Columbus. And he's got them in their window opening. And here's why I think the Blues are actually better positioned than Detroit or Columbus, because the other two teams in here I agree with, Montreal and Utah. They've had a lot of top picks. They've got a lot of guys who are at the NHL level now, and you are seeing that superior talent. But when I look at Detroit, all of their guys that they have invested top picks on are at the NHL level. They've got a couple that are still just drafted minor leagues, but that's because the guys that they've invested their picks in have not amounted to what they need them to be. Columbus is the exact same way. Columbus has got all these guys they've invested their draft stock into, the ones that they've been bad for, and they're still missing the playoffs. The reason I think the Blues are in a better position is they have that healthy medium of young guys that are already at the NHL level and proven to be excellent players that are making impacts. And then they've got the young players that the Blues aren't worrying about right now. And people see that and they say, oh, well, they're not good enough to crack the NHL roster. I don't know if I believe that to be true. I think they're good enough if they wanted them to crack the NHL roster. But the Blues want them to be great when they crack the NHL roster. So I don't agree with the no man's land. I think all of these bad contracts that people have talked about, with the exception of Justin Falk, those guys are off. And I don't even know Falk's that bad of a contract. He's a $6.5 million is a bottom pair defenseman, which is what he might be by the end of this season. But Parayko's not a bad contract anymore. Schen's not a bad contract anymore. You got a lot of guys who might be off the books. I think they're closer to the window opening where Detroit and Columbus are than they would be in no man's land. 2 years ago, they were in no man's land, and I agreed with that.
Here's what they describe the Blues as for their future outlook. In Dalibor Dvorsky, Dylan Holloway, Philip Broberg, Jimmy Snuggerud, Justin Carbonneau, and Logan Mailloux, the Blues have amassed a deep group of young talent. The problem is that most people view these players' ceilings as contending teams' third or fourth best forwards or their third or fourth best defensemen. Top of the lineup players, sure. True number one centers, number one wingers, number one defensemen, maybe on a playoff team if they get there with depth, but not on a true contender in recent years other than, well, the exception, which was the 2019 Blues.
Yeah.
That's my thing, Alex, and this has been my biggest question about the Blues' current build. It's different than the current version of the Cardinals, but it's similar to what I hoped that this version of the Cardinals was going to be.
Mm-hmm.
Do you have the ability to win a cup as currently constructed? Can this kind of a depth of scoring, pack mentality, all of that, can that win in 2025 in the NHL? Because I saw it in 2019. It worked for the Blues in that scenario. And I think the reason that we view it as it can work is because it was our team that did it. But with all of the other seasons in which we've seen in the last decade, basically, it hasn't been that way. You've seen all-time great players go on these runs. You've seen teams with 2 to 3 superstar level talents that have gone on the runs. So is that now the outlook for the NHL? Are we in that era, so to speak, of the NHL? Or can the Blues find a way to break through once again and become that team that is still an outlier?
I don't disagree with that. Like, they do need another guy to get into Robert Thomas star category. Like, the hard part with prospects are, like, yes, they view them that now. But remember, Robert Thomas was viewed as like a middle six center when he was drafted. He was drafted 20th overall, and now he's viewed as one of the top centermen in the game. So some of these prospect guys have been out on Dvorsky for a while, or Stenberg or Carbonell, and I don't know what they're going to become. But I don't disagree with the sentiment of, look, if they want to be cup contenders, they need somebody to step into star category. I don't know if Kairu's a star, more of an all-star caliber player, as I think what the Athletic labeled him as. Buchnevich the same. I think Dylan Holloway could be that star. I think Jimmy Snuggerud could be that star in the same sense that Vladimir Tarasenko was that star for the Blues, where he was a guy that could score 40 goals. I don't think that's happening now, but maybe 2, 3, 4 years from now. Somebody has to step into that star conversation to put the Blues into that spot. But the part that I would disagree with on the Athletic is I actually think they have 4 or 5 guys that could potentially do that, whereas they look at it as they don't have anybody in that criteria.
Yeah, I think they're looking at it as, all right, look back to Chicago, Pittsburgh, Washington, Tampa, Colorado, Vegas, and Florida. Look at their star level talent. Now compare that to the talent that we're talking about here. Do the Blues have guys that can reach that level of talent? I think even the most optimistic Blues fan would say probably not.
No, and
that's a decade of sample size now that we're talking about, with the one exception being the 2019 St. Louis Blues.
Yeah, but I don't know if that's necessary, and it might just be biased because of that Blues team, but I've seen Florida dominate these last couple of postseasons, but I've also seen guys on Florida's team that the third and fourth line players that dominate. To me, winning in the playoffs comes down to you have role players that come up big, your star players do their job, and your goaltender comes up big. And
yeah, I don't know, man. I mean, Carter Verhaeghe last year was their best player. Matthew Tkachuk had 23 points last postseason. Sam Reinhart, 23 points. Alexander Barkov, 22 points. Those were their leading scorers from a year ago. Yeah. Those guys are studs.
But I think Robert Thomas could do that in a playoff series. We've seen Jordan Kyrou do that in a playoff series. I think a Dylan Holloway, if we were
just not at the same level as those guys.
Not yet.
Not yet.
And that's the part. You don't get to that level until you do it in the playoffs. Like Robert Thomas, to me, is at that level.
I also haven't done what those guys have done in the regular season. So it's twofold. I just haven't seen them produce the way that these guys do. And that's just Florida. You could go with Vegas, Colorado, Tampa.
But I'd still say not yet for some of those guys. Like Robert Thomas he was a 90-point player this last season with Selke Trophy potentials if he doesn't get injured. Dylan Holloway was a 30-plus goal scorer last year if he doesn't get injured. Now, I know I'm playing the ifs game here, but that's what I'm talking about.
You also need them not only to continue to do
exceed it, yeah,
but to exceed it.
But that's the not yet. And you know what? If Dylan Holloway turns out to last year was a fluke and he falls more in line with kind of this middle six, then yeah, the Blues are
or even
they were
if he
right.
is just what he was last year, which is a really, really good player. It is not in line with these guys that I'm talking about here.
Yeah.
And that is my question for the Blues. It is not a criticism of the Blues. It is a question of how do you get to that next step if it requires you maybe to go out and find that player from elsewhere? Does it require you to dip into free agency? Does it require you to dip into, all right, we're going to get uncomfortable here. The Bolduc for Mayu trade was risky. Now we're going with a 3-for-1. We're trading Dvorsky and Neighbors and Stenberg or whatever, and we're going to go out there and get a star that we think is the missing piece for us. That is, for me, my biggest question about the 2025 Blues. I think this team is going to be good. I think they will probably make the playoffs. What does it look like for them to take that next step? Is it something that can be done with the players that are internal, or is it something that will require an external move for them to be able to get there? Alongside Alex Ferrario, I'm Brandon Kiley. Coming up next, we're either going to be joined in studio by a St. Louis Blues player, or we'll talk about what changes for the Illini in the event that they lose this weekend, as Vegas is currently expecting. We'll talk about that next year on 101 ESPN.
Live from Blues training camp at the Centene Community Ice Center, this is BK and Ferrario on 101 ESPN. Brought to you by Bud Light, Skimmer's Original Vodka Iced Tea, and E&B Granite, Bernie Federko's only choice for granite countertops, cabinets, and flooring.
Alongside Alex and T-Bone on BK. So Illinois, huge game this weekend. Huge game, and they're a pretty big underdog. On the road at Indiana. T-Bone back in with us, by the way. He got some audio from Jim Montgomery. Shout out to him for doing that for the station. Appreciate his time heading over there. Illinois at Indiana. T-Bone is going to be in attendance in that game. I will be at the Missouri game against South Carolina.
I will be watching Blues and Stars on Saturday.
He'll be on the broadcast for the Blues game. So the biggest stories in St. Louis, we will have somebody either in attendance or covering the game this weekend right here on this very show. T-Bone, for your Illini, my biggest question going into this game is, what if Vegas is right and you lose? Because Vegas has you installed as a 6.5-point road underdog. That's a pretty significant number. It's bigger than I was anticipating. If you lose this game, it becomes pretty hard for me to see a scenario in which you can lose another game other than Ohio State and still make it to the college football playoff.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think it makes that USC game when they host them at home the following week as a must-win, because I think this stretch of the season, these 3 of the next 4 games at Purdue, they should win that one. But at Indiana, hosting USC, home against Ohio State, you can only lose 2 of those. You can't lose to Ohio State, USC, and Indiana and say we're a 3-team, 3-loss team that gets into the playoffs. Even if you have just 2 losses, right? Like say you beat Indiana, who knows where they'll ultimately settle up in the top 25 if they finish in the top 25 this year. It's going to be hard to kind of sneak your way past Penn State, Ohio State, and Oregon, who are the 3 top-tier teams in the Big Ten. Maybe you get a 4th this year because Notre Dame's having their struggles. But yeah, I mean, this is one of those games where you really don't want to lose this one, so you still have your mulligan prior to USC and Ohio State. I'm surprised by how big the line is. I think it started at 4.5, and it's crept its way up to 6.5. That's a little surprising to me, but I just don't know what to make of Indiana, right? They've played – you want to talk about a team that's played truly nobody so far this year. That would be the Hoosiers. So we'll see what this game ends up with, but I agree. I think if you're Illinois, you lose this game – all of a sudden, like it makes USC definitely a must-win because you have to plan on losing that Ohio State game, I think.
Yeah, for me, if you lose this, I'm not going to consider you a playoff team because we've talked about how there's 3 significantly better teams in the Big Ten, unless they do the impossible and beat Ohio State and all the other Big Ten teams. But you've got 3 teams that are sure locks, in my opinion, of playoff teams in terms of Oregon, Penn State, and Ohio State. I don't know if the Big Ten is able to get more than 3 teams into the college football playoffs. And if you lose to Indiana, it's hard for me to look at Illinois and say you're a playoff team.
This could be for Illinois what the South Carolina game was for Mizzou last year. Now, that took place later on in the season, so it's a little different in terms of how it takes the wind out of your sails. But Mizzou at the time was 7-2. Their 2 losses were big losses, don't get me wrong, but losses on the road at Texas A&M and at Alabama. A 2-loss team last year, with those losses as significant as they were, probably still wouldn't have been able to get into the playoff. But in this year's version of college football, I think Mizzou last year with a win against South Carolina probably gets in. Again, in today's college football, because of how topsy-turvy it is, the fewer great teams across the landscape. So for Illinois, if you win this game, you're feeling pretty good, man, because basically the rest of the way, all you have to do is take care of business. Because if you lose still against USC and Ohio State, you have this win this weekend, and you take care of business the rest of the way, you're 10-2. I think a 10-2 team this year in the Big Ten will almost certainly make it to the college football playoff. Even if it's not the most difficult strength of schedule, it's good enough that it'll probably get in. This is the swing game. This is your swing game. You've got to pull off a big win somewhere on your schedule this year. It could be this week. It could be against USC. It could be against Ohio State. It has to be one of those 3, though, at a minimum. And this, to me, feels like the most likely of those 3 games that you could potentially win. So, yeah, it eliminates all margin for error in the event that this thing goes the way that Vegas thinks it will.
Yeah, and USC, they might be able to take down. They get that 11 a.m. start, which is helpful for a West Coast team coming out and playing at 9 a.m. Yeah,
West to Midwest, eh?
I do. And if we're just being, I don't believe in Lincoln Riley's team. Indiana, like, they could be a legitimate another playoff contender type team again this year. I mean, they've got a good quarterback. They've been putting up really good offensive numbers, but I just never want to go into a game. And I don't think Ohio State is like a lock to be a loss, because we've talked about there is no elite team in college football. There's a scenario where Illinois can win that game. It is at home, which helps. But I wouldn't plan on like saying, yeah, well, if we lose to Indiana, at least we get to play Ohio State for a chance for our playoff lives. No, that is not a game that you should be planning on that. You need to find a way to set the tone in this game against Indiana. And to me, it starts with their running game. Can they run the freaking football, which is a thing that Brett Bielema wants them to be able to do. And so far, they haven't been able to.
No, I would say it's about
you
the
learned that
game.
last week.
I know what the identity of this Illinois team is, man. They throw the football. They throw to win. And so for Brett Bielema, he has to change his mindset. We go into this thing, and we're going to win or lose based upon whether or not Luke Altmaier can win or lose us this game. Because you're going to have to score. You're going to have to keep up with Indiana, and I don't think you're doing that based upon just defense shutting them down and running game. No, that's been the identity of Illinois in the past, but it's been the identity because they're good at it. They had Chase Brown, like that. Yes, of course, run the football as much as humanly possible when that guy is in the backfield. For Mizzou this year, you've got Ahmad Hardy. Yeah, run the football. Hey, a couple of years ago, Cody Schrader, run it. Run the hell out of the football. You're not that team this year. You are a team that throws to win, and I think they need to adjust their mindset accordingly. Is there any upside for Mizzou's game this weekend?
No.
Will the fast lane say, hey, they beat South Carolina, now I can buy in it?
Oh, absolutely.
I only use them as the fill-in here because obviously we know how that went a couple of weeks ago when Missouri had a win that didn't matter.
Well, it was really Jamie and Carey.
Fair.
Not to name names, but
no, we can name them.
They probably shouldn't have named those two. I've got to hit this now on me
in person as well. I think you're right.
Yeah,
and that sucks. Because then next week, there's no upside to the mass game.
So you're talking Alabama.
We're talking about Alabama as being the game where we'll find out whether or not Mizzou is actually.
And I even still think if they win that, people would be like, yeah, but it's not the same Alabama as well. They were going to fire their coach after game 1 of the season. Like, really? Like, I don't.
The funny thing is they might be a 4-loss team.
Alabama?
If they lose to Mizzou, because they've got Georgia on the road coming up next weekend. And then they have Vandy at home. That's a losable game for Alabama. And then they travel to Missouri, and in the event that Mizzou beats them, and we're talking about this as like, oh, that's a big win. It's a big win to beat 2-4 Alabama? Is it?
No.
I mean, like, it just becomes one of these things where each week the team that you beat adds another loss to their resume, which makes it look like a worse win because you keep winning.
It's possible, like, the first game that you really look at it and you go, boy, that was a big resume builder.
Is Vandy?
It's either Vandy or A&M. I was thinking A&M because I could see where Vandy adds a couple losses.
Isn't Auburn before that, though?
Yeah.
Yeah, but I don't like Auburn's another one.
Auburn's got an interesting game this weekend. On the road at Oklahoma, and then on the road at Texas A&M, and then at home against Georgia. So they could drop each of the next 3 games. Now you're talking about 3-3 Auburn, 0-3 in the SEC. Vandy is probably the team, T-Bone, because in the scenario that we just presented, they will have that win against Alabama. Yeah. So they would probably be 6-1 coming into that game against Missouri, or 7-0 if they get also a win against LSU. So that's probably the spot, but
even then, like,
Mizzou's,
I was gonna say that's like the 2 teams that like people don't like consider in the SEC, right? Like Mizzou fans want to belong in the SEC. Vandy fans will say we're here too.
Mizzou's the equivalent of Rodney Dangerfield, just no respect. No matter what happens, he's just you didn't beat anybody.
Can you imagine Mizzou versus Vandy in Nashville for college game day?
It's a top 15 matchup.
I mean, there's a
world
real
are we living in? Meanwhile, Alabama's a 4-loss team. Like, where are we?
The new age of college football. Weird-ish happens.
I have not looked at the slate for that weekend. Oh, well, that's Penn State versus Ohio State.
Oh, okay, sorry.
I don't think
you don't get college game day.
They may say, hey, that's not on our network. We'll go to Vandy, Mizzou.
Oh, that's a different weekend. LSU versus Texas A&M. So, yeah, congratulations. They end up getting
Mahomes' long body says, all right, fine, I agree with you guys. If they beat Alabama, that won't be impressive either. Yeah, that checks out.
All right, alongside Alex Ferrario and Tanner Hendrickson, I'm Brandon Kiley. You've got BK and Ferrario here on 101 ESPN. Coming up next, we're either going to be joined in person by a Blues player. I keep saying that every segment. Eventually, maybe it'll be true.
Maybe.
Or we'll talk about Justin Carbonneau and some of the line combinations that they went through today. Jim Montgomery had an interesting quote specifically on Dvorsky and why he's playing wing right now at camp. We'll talk about that next year on 101 ESPN.
101 ESPN Sports Center.
I'm Jordan Deacon. This Sports Center update is driven by Johnny Londoff Chevrolet and Johnny Londoff Autoplex. Yesterday, the Cardinals lost to the Cincinnati Reds by a score of 6-2. They are idle today and back in action tomorrow, opening a series against the Brewers. First pitch at Busch Stadium is at 7:15. As for the Blues, the guys have been broadcasting today from Centene Community Ice Center. If you missed anything from today's show, be sure to check out the podcast at 101ESPN.com or from your free 101 mobile app. That podcast is brought to you by the Schaefer Door Company. I'm Jordan Deacon. This Sports Center update was driven by Johnny Londoff Chevrolet and Johnny Londoff Autoplex. See them at londoff.com. Chevy. Together we drive. Are you kidding me?
BK and Ferrario are broadcasting live from Blues training camp at the Centene Community Ice Center. Brought to you by Bud Light, Skimmer's Original Vodka Iced Tea, and E&B Granite. Bernie Federko's only choice for granite countertops, cabinets, and flooring.
Alongside Alex and T-Bone on BK. So, Alex, just a little bit ago, Jim Montgomery was talking with the media, and he basically said, hey, good first day. We got to clean some stuff up, but I liked what we had on the ice today. Cool. That's what you'd expect after day one of training camp.
Hey, at least he didn't say, oh, these guys look like they're ready to win a cup this year. Most people do.
That'd be Ferrario as a coach.
Yeah, totally.
Well, these guys look like they're in the best shapes of their lives.
Start playing that parade down Market Street now because we look great.
Alex, you've been saying that for the last 4 years. Yeah, but it's bound to click one of these years.
Alex is managing the White Sox this year.
Yeah.
Going into spring training.
I think this is our year.
This is the year. I like the group that we've got assembled here, boys. They go into the first series of the season.
Get swept. Don't score like a run.
He's like, might have been a little wrong here, boys. All right. So Monty was then asked, and I thought this was a really good answer. We were talking earlier today, Alex, about some of the young guys, where they're at right now. And Dvorsky immediately stood out because he's on the wing at day one of training camp. And Monty was asked why that was the case. Here's his explanation on why they're using Dvorsky at wing right now.
We felt that, with the players we acquired in the summer, that we got deep down the middle. So this was an opportunity to see a young man. He's gifted. I mean, he scored two beautiful goals today. So offensively, he's gifted. It's easier to focus on what you're good at as a winger than a center.
What do you make of it, Alex?
I make it as we don't need him to be a top 6 centerman for us in the near future. So let's put him in a position where he can build his confidence. I've already seen a couple of people either text in or tweet out like this is concerning that they're using him at the wing. Guys, they did this for the first 3 years of Robert Thomas's career at the NHL level. Centermen will tell you it is easier as a centerman to go to wing and move back to center than it is for a winger to go to center.
Of course.
So this is we're trying to build his confidence up. Like in preseason action, he's playing with 2 guys that are going to create plenty of space for him. Let's let him feel like he can perform in the NHL and then build the confidence with the center. I also look at that and say, cool, he's going to the American Hockey League this year.
Interesting.
Because he's not going to be a winger on this team. They've got plenty of guys that can play the wing. If they think their center's depth, they need Dvorsky to develop as a center. And it's not a matter of he'll play center right when he gets to the NHL. He might start at the wing. But what will benefit him long-term is continuing to work as the center. So I think hearing that and seeing where he's playing, it's more of a long shot that he makes this roster out of camp.
So I've always felt like it was a long shot for him to make the roster. I would say this is the only way for him to make the roster, though. So, of course, at NHL camp, where you're trying to make the NHL team, you're going to be on the wing because you don't have an opening down the middle right now. This team is incredibly deep at center. There is not a spot where Dalibor Dvorsky can realistically unseat somebody. He's not going to beat Schenn. He's not beating Suter. So, boom, there's your spot. Your 3 spots right now, Schenn, Suter, and Thomas. He's not beating any of those 3 out currently. The only spot that Dvorsky potentially could win is that 3rd line winger spot. That's it. So right now he's working with Suter and Kyrou. He's on one of the wings. That's where he should be currently. Because if you're battling for a wing spot, let's find out what you look like on the wing. Let's find out what you look like on the wing with players who you could be paired with on that 3rd line for the foreseeable future. So, yeah, I love that they're doing this. You might as well find out. There's almost no downside. There is some decent upside. This is the way that I think they should be going about it. This feels like low-hanging fruit.
Yeah, I mean, look, they're 2 years away from needing Dalibor Dvorsky to play center, barring some type of injury. They've got Bukestad for a 2-year deal. They've got Suter for a 2-year deal. They don't need it. Now, if Dvorsky just turns heads and looks like he's breaking down the door to be a centerman, Bukestad can move to the wing. Suter can move to the wing. That's not a big deal. They'll still have Shen who can move to the wing, but they don't need him to do it. What they need him to do is be the best player on the American Hockey League, and when an injury happens, he comes up, can play the wing position, and contribute at the NHL level. And that's what Robert Thomas was. I specifically remember, and I always reference this, conversations that I had with Thomas that season, his first year, where he was up in the box for 6 or 7 nights. And he'd be like, it's because I would ask him, be like, man, how do you balance developing? And he said, this is great for my development because I am watching the game through the eyes of Steve Ott up top so that I can take what he's talking about and put it on the ice.
All right, Alex, it is time. Today is day 1 of the 2025 St. Louis Blues training camp.
Oh, yeah.
You have seen roughly 40 minutes of them taking the ice. So I think you are more than prepared.
You already told me that I'm overreacting, so absolutely I'm more than prepared.
I caught you in the right mood.
Yes, you did.
Let's get into it. It is time for Ferrario.
Oh, Jordan hit my open.
You're listening to BK and Ferrario. It's time for the Ferrario 5, a top 5 list of very random things. So, Ferrario, give us your top 5.
I think if I remember correctly, you guys made fun of me that they weren't bold enough last year, so we went bold this year,
Wouldn't
boys.
one like Parayko play 40 games?
No. Play 40 games?
Yeah, what is something like that?
No, it was Dvorsky scores at least 1 point at the NHL level, which, by the way,
that one was bold
pretty
and
bold
wrong.
prediction because he only played 2 games and didn't score a point. Number 1 or 5 on this list, however you want to go with this.
These are bold predictions for the 2025
These are bold
season.
predictions for the 2025 season. Logan Mailloux will score 35 or more points this season. I looked at it because I was like, okay, we've talked the Evan Bouchard comp before. His rookie season scored 41 points. Now, I'm not going to go as far to say 40-plus points with Mailloux because I don't think he's going to get that ice time. But I think he's going to get power play time, and I think injuries will happen, and he'll get top 4 minutes. I think 35-plus points is very easy.
That's what I was going to ask you as a follow-up was what time on ice do you
I think you're probably talking like 16, 17 minutes.
Okay. In that scenario, I think this is plausible.
Yeah.
If he is playing 12 to 13, I don't see any scenario where
Are we doing like our version of Mythbusters? Yeah, I'll go plausible too.
35 plus. I gotta hate you guys sometimes with those bold predictions. All right, number whatever on this list. This isn't ranked in any order. Sure. Nick Bukestad scores 20 plus goals.
Oh.
Scored 22 a couple of years ago with Arizona. It was like 5 minutes of camp, and I was in the middle of a conference call at the time. But Bukestad is massive. And I don't think he's going to be a 4th-line center. I think he's going to be a 3rd-line winger for you. And when injuries pop up, because they happen, he could get top 6 minutes. Like, that is a big body that I would imagine is going to be on one of those power play units parked in front of the net. 20-plus goals for Nick Bukestad.
I like where your head's at. I'm going myth.
Fine.
He scored 20-plus twice in his career, so I think he'll be like 15 would be where I would put him in. But, hey, it's bold. I like it.
22 with Arizona, and Arizona had nobody. So imagine what he's going to look.
Somebody had to score.
Oh, yeah, but imagine what he's going to. Well, they had guys. They just couldn't score. Imagine what he's going to look like on a second power play unit. All right, 3 on this list. Jordan Binnington finished his top 3 in Vezina votes.
I think he's always in the Ferrario 5.
Yeah, typically, but I think in the past
I've
I've
good defensively.
Yeah, I think I played the field in that one, but like, hey, top 5 in Vezina votes. I'm going to lean into this one a little bit more and say top 3. I think the shorter amount of games that he has used because of the Olympics allows for him to perform better. I still think he's going to give you about 37 to 42 games this season. And I think because this defense, in my opinion, has improved and you've got guys, unless an injury pops up, I think that save percentage is going to be towards the top in the NHL. And if you get 40 games, you're going to be in consideration for a Vezina. And I think he's going to finish top 3. Is that bold enough for you? You're not saying a whole lot over there.
I like them because they're bold.
Oh,
we're also up against it.
Wait till you hear this one. Okay, I got to go quick here. 2 on this list. Dylan Holloway and Robert Thomas both score 90 points.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, real bold. You know the last time that they've had 2 players score 90 or more points?
It's been like
It's got to be like
years.
Gretzky and Hull, right?
It's Hull and Shanahan, 92,
Okay,
93 season. But I think with Thomas, I think a lot of people would agree 90 points. I think Dylan Holloway gets there. Number 1 on this list, Blues finished top 3 in the Central Division. I told you guys during one of the commercial breaks, I don't think Winnipeg's going to be as good unless Hellebuck just dominates, and I think Colorado's depth is going to be a problem. So I see them finishing top 3 in the Central.
I think you go 2 for 5, but I like the bold predictions. They're fun.
I think I go 4 for 5.
4 for whoa.
Yeah. The one that I'm not as certain on is the 90 points for each. But
I think Holloway 90 points is aggressive. I think Benner top 3 is very aggressive, and I think Mayu 35-plus points as I look at the time on ice potential. I think that's partially aggressive as well.
The Mayu one, the Mayu one, I think I'm second most confident in. Bukestad is the most confident.
Yeah, Bukestad one, I don't know. I'm skeptical of that one. I like the top 3 in the Central because I do think there's a path for them to sneak into the top 3. I love where your head's at on Benner. I could believe him having a big year. Top 3's aggressive. If you did the top 5, I might have gotten on board.
That's what I used to do.
Yeah, but I like 20. them. They are bold. You know what?
Top 20. I'm going to slap you. I'm going to Will Smith you.
Coming up next with the Rewind here on 101 ESPN.
from Blues training camp at the Centene Community Ice Center, this is BK and Ferrario on 101 ESPN. Brought to you by Bud Light, Skimmer's Original Vodka Iced Tea, and E&B Granite, Bernie Federko's only choice for granite countertops, cabinets, and flooring. Let's run it back with a Daily Rewind on BK and Ferrario. Brought to you by Gloria Loom, your home sold guaranteed realty. Selling your home begins at GloriaHasTheBuyers.com.
Alongside Alex and T-Bone, I'm BK. BK and Ferrario here on 101 ESPN. If you guys missed anything from today's show, be sure to check it out on the podcast page, 101ESPN.com. The free 101 ESPN app is where you go to find it. That is always sponsored by...
Oh, you'll want to look at it today. Schaefer Door Company.
Why do we want to look at it?
Because there's a Ferrario 5 today.
Oh.
This was dominated by Blues conversation. Are you bleeping kidding me?
What did I miss?
What a show today. Where do you get to my rating?
Grade from today's show, Alex?
10. T-Bone gave a 10 yesterday, and I felt like that was a little premature. Today was a 10.
What? Yesterday we had
Today was
three
like
Blues players.
7.8.
There were hockey players on the ice. There were line combinations, and there was a
barely
Ferrario
got to watch
5.
it because you were on the phone the entire time that they were
and they
doing
weren't skating
conference
right
call.
in front of us.
No, they weren't.
No, not
Not
here.
part. But we got to see them earlier.
I'm going like 7.2.
That's trash, man. That's
Training camp
trash.
opening's fun, but it didn't.
Oh, you guys are crazy. Hockey is officially back.
That Ferrario 5 is going 0 for 5.
No,
so.
that one's going 4 for 5.
We do have a new edition of the Last Minute Blues podcast available for you on YouTube, youtube.com/101ESPN STL. Joey Vitale is on the show for that one. We also have a brand new Spread Zone breaking down week 4 in the NCAA and week 3 in the NFL. That's over there right now. And later on this afternoon, you'll be able to see a new edition of the Redbird Report.
Are you guys excited about that?
And Tanner Hendrickson, youtube.com/101ESPN STL is where you can go to find it.
After a week off, too, so you guys are going to have some hot takes today, huh?
Oh, I got a lot
This
to get off my
hot
chest.
Redbird Club?
I think it's going to be a pretty quick episode.
Oh, yeah.
Like maybe 10.
You guys going to walk in and be like, hey, Cardinals are bad. Still haven't heard from Heim.
I think we got about 20 minutes in us today.
Oof.
We're going to do like
Good for you, man. 20 minutes is a lot.
Kind of like a mystery podcast of like, where's Heim? You know, that's what we're going to do.
Okay. I'm in for that. All right,
Where's Heim?
Alex.
Like, where's Carmen Sandiego?
To finish out today's show, whether it be line combinations, what you saw on the ice, which wasn't a whole lot, or what you heard from Jim Montgomery, what was the biggest thing that you took away from day one of Blues training?
I just think it's the depth of the team. You're seeing like it's preseason, it's training camp, and some of these lines are going to last probably 1 or 2 days. But seeing where they're putting some of these younger players, seeing the pairs that they're going with, I do think a strength of this team is going to be their depth. I mean, they're going a Buchnevich and probably a Neighbors combination because Neighbors, in my opinion, is sitting in the Texier spot. He wasn't here yet. Thomas and Snuggerud, you had Holloway playing with Shen. You're seeing at least the depth on display, and I'll tell you, they look bigger. Like Bukestad in the middle, that's a massive shift from where they were last year. So they definitely have added size on both the back end and up front.
I know they do this in most years, but I love the way they handle their young players. I just think it's so cool. Dvorsky with Suter and Kyrou, Holloway and Shin are paired with Carbonneau. And then in the first group, what we got to see was Stenberg skating with Thomas and Snuggerud. I just think that's a great way to handle it, man. You've got these young guys. Jim Montgomery said afterwards, we like having them be with these veterans because they can ask them questions. Mm-hmm. You're going through drills that these veterans have been through 100 different times. Some of these young guys like Carbonneau, it's probably never been through some of the drills that they did today on the ice. So I think it's a really smart way to go about it. It also puts them in a position to have success because you're with good players and you want your good guys to be with other good guys. So I love the way that they handle that. The biggest thing to me that I saw on the ice today, Snuggerud looked awesome. Mm-hmm. He was the number one player to me that stood out on the ice. So that would be my biggest takeaway from today's practice.
Yeah, I think on the ice, the guy that stood out to me, I agree. Jimmy Snuggerud looked really good with Robert Thomas as that pairing. I also thought it was noteworthy. We didn't get to see it because the second group was skating while we were out there. First off, Jim Montgomery, another person throwing high praise towards Dylan Holloway, basically calling him the Energizer Bunny. Says never
like
runs
a guy
out.
Who could get 90 points.
Never runs out of energy, brings everybody else with him. And also Logan Mayhew's defense was the thing that he pointed out. Not his offensive upside, the defense, which was a
35 plus
praising
points
him all offseason.
Yeah.
He's the one that said, "Hey, wasn't that the baby Braco
Yeah.
thing?" Yeah. So he's a very
Good stick, he
firm
said, which-
supporter.
And I saw his
That's
comments
called
on
Braco.
Milan Lucic as well, who basically said what we've been talking about. Like, look, he's going to have to earn his spot, but at least he makes some hockey decisions that at least opens eyes.
All right, he's Alex Ferrario. That's Tanner Hendrickson. I'm Brandon Kiley. Again, any of our podcasts, whether it be our show, the Last Minute Blues podcast, Redbird Report, they're all available for you at youtube.com/101 ESPN STL. Expecting a few different players. I'm serious. Tomorrow here on the show, we'll be broadcasting live once again out at the Centene Community Ice Center. For everybody else, and Jordan Deacon, who did a fantastic job for us back
Way to
in
go,
the
Jordan.
studio today. I'm Brandon Kiley. We'll talk to you guys tomorrow at 11 a.m. Fast Lane's coming up next here on 101 ESPN.